Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook Library, a sanctuary of stories where fan fictions come alive, where ancient legends echo from the East and Western worlds awaken with wonder. Settle in. Your journey begins now.
Teen Wolf The Argent Chapter 51. A mysterious phone call. Soon after they parted ways, Max, Derek, Isaac, Boyd and Erica reached their training ground. As soon as they reached there, they saw Scott being tied up and placed inside a mountain ash circle. Max was confused watching this, because when he sensed here he saw a dozen of berserkers. Max then didn't bother much as he went forward and broke the mountain ash barrier and reached out to Scott and untied him. Derek and others also came by his side. Max shook Scott and woke him up with some key. Scott, who woke up, saw Max and others standing by and shouted, "Guys, run. This is a trap." As soon as he said this, nearby all the surroundings started to explode. Max's pupil shrunk and he immediately cast an energy barrier around them using most of his ki. Their explosion continued on as it continuously chucked away Max's energy. The explosion continued on for 3 minutes. Max was covered in sweat by the time it was finished. Isaac, Boyd and Erica was shivering listening to the explosions outside the barrier, but at the same time they were shocked to see Max using this wired kind of barrier that could hold off explosions like this. Derek was relieved that Max came in with them. He didn't know what would have happened if Max wasn't here at this time. As soon as the explosions ended, a couple of dozens of berserkers started walking towards from all directions. Everyone frowned watching this, and they knew that this was gonna be tough getting out of this situation. Max, who watched this, was pissed off. He didn't know why, but he felt something amiss, he didn't know what. So he decided to finish off these berserkers first and think about it later. He took out his combat knife and infused it with chakra as he was almost out of ki and started running around and slicing every berserker that he reached. He didn't let all of them get closer as he'd be stuck, so he sliced off their legs one by one. After a few minutes he started to finish them off, while Derek and others also joined in as the berserkers were unable to move right now. By the time they took care of all the berserkers, Max was panting heavily. Max then turned to Scott and asked, Did they catch you? Yesterday after I reached home, around 6 berserkers came at the same time. I couldn't fight them off. They knocked me out, and when I woke up, I was here. And I saw those berserkers plant bombs all over the place. When they noticed that I was awake, they again knocked me out. And this time I woke up. You were here and you know the rest. Scott said with a serious expression. Max then asked, What about your mom? Is she all right? Scott said with a smile, She's out of town. Thank God for that. Max listened and finally asked, All this time you still didn't see Jackson? Scott shook his head. Derek was about to say something, but he was cut off by the ringtone of Max's phone. Max checked the number, but it was unknown, so he received it and said, Hello. A playful voice came from the other side. How did you like my present, Maxwell? As soon as Max heard this, he put it to loudspeaker and said, What do you mean? The playful voice said, Don't tell me you didn't like my bombs. I thought you liked making traps. Max, hearing this, frowned and said, Who are you? The voice said, How could you forget this easily? It's me, Jackson. Everyone was startled that Jackson actually called Max at this time. But out of everyone's expectation, Max said, You're not Jackson. Tell me who you are. The voice in phone continued, Oh, how are you so sure that I'm not Jackson? Max just said, Jackson neither is strong or resourceful to set up traps and bombs like this. So are you gonna tell me why you are or not? The voice said, You're as smart as Grandpa said. But you forgot one thing. You're not the only smart one around here. Max knew that he wasn't getting anywhere with this guy, so he went straight to the point. What do you want? The voice from phone, I want you to answer my question. The voice paused for a second and continued, I have a sniper and a single bullet. And through my scope I'm able to see 3 targets, your mom, you dad and your sister. Tell me, Maxwell, which one should I kill today? As soon as Max heard this he was enraged. He shouted, You touch my family, I'll find you wherever you are and shred you to pieces. The voice said, Tisk tisk tisk. You don't get to make the rules. I'm the gamer. I make the rules and you play by it. So tell me, Maxwell, which one is your pick today? Max was getting angrier and angrier by the minute. He asked, I don't think I know you, And I don't think that I ever bothered you, so why are you doing this? The voice from the other side said, why? Why? Because you took everything from me. You have to suffer just like I did. One by one. I'll take everyone away from you. For today's question you don't have to answer. I'll come back in 3 months. This is your mourning period. Enjoy it while it lasts. Bang, that's all everyone heard from the phone. Everyone knew that Max might have just lost a family member. Max, who was heard the gunshot, roared, "No." And he immediately flew towards his home at hyper speed. As everyone else who saw this were shocked. Derek knew that Max had a lot of tricks up his sleeve, but never in his wildest dreams did he think that Max would fly off. Isaac, Boyd and Erica were no different either. They were watching with their jaws dropped. Boyd, who soon came to good senses, asked, "Did he just fly?" Isaac and Erica also had the same question. Derek frowned and said, "Don't talk about this now. Let's go to his home." And they started running. Chapter 52 Information. Max, who was flying towards his parents' house, reached there in half a minute. When he went inside, he saw Chris and Victoria holding on to Allison's lifeless body, but he was able to sense a bit of life force inside her. He immediately went near them and asked, "Is the bullet still inside her?" Chris shook his head and said, "No, it came out through her back." He suddenly took out a vial of blood and poured it on the bullet wound on her chest. At first there wasn't any reaction, but after a few seconds the wound started healing. Chris and Victoria, watching this, were amazed. Chris asked, "What was that?" Max said with a grave face, "Vampire blood. I stocked up a bit when I was in New Orleans." As much as they despised vampires, this time they didn't have much rejected to their blood, 'cause it saved their daughter's life. After Allison healed up, she didn't wake up, she just rested on the couch. Max just realized that he was relying too much on the original plot, that he didn't think about all the changes he made. Chris came to Max's side as asked, "Who was it?" Max said, "I don't know." Chris stared at him and shouted, "What do you mean you don't know? My daughter was shot in my own home. You better give me a good explanation." Max hung his head down and said, "All this time, I faced enemies head on. At least I knew who I was fighting. But today someone is after me and I don't know who he is or where he is. All I know is that he's a werejaguar and he hates me to the core. And I feel like he knows me from a long time." Chris didn't say anything. He just took his phone and called someone. "Hello." A woman from the other side said, Well, this is a surprise. What bothered you so much that you had to call me?" Chris frowned and said, "Araya, someone's after my kid and a shot was taken inside our home." Then Araya said in a serious tone, "Nobody hunts a hunter." "What do to know about him?" Chris said, "He had a grudge towards my boy. And he's a werejaguar." Araya paused for some time hearing this, as then said, "Werejagars are rare. I don't think it'll be hard to find one." Max at this time snatched the phone from Chris and said, "He nearly had an army of berserkers. He's smart, good at tactical usage like bombs and guns, and has a superiority complex. Find him for me, I'll owe you one." Araya was surprised hearing Max's voice suddenly, but soon listened to everything and said, "Give me some time, kid." Max said, "You got till tomorrow morning. I think you can deal with that." Araya said, "Don't worry, kid. I'll give you a name soon. Get yourself some rest there." Max gave the phone to Chris and went out. Chris asked Araya, "Are you sure you can find him?" Araya replied from the other side, "Don't worry. Their technology has improved a lot compared to 10 years ago. If I can't find someone through that, I can always catch a witch and do my bidding. You take care of that kid first. He seems a lot different than before." Chris replied, "Thanks, Araya. Let us know as soon as you find anything." After that he hung up. Max, who had went out, directly went to Danny's home. As soon as Danny saw Max, he was surprised. He said, "Dude, you come back to town. Awesome, man." Max looked at him and said with a serious face, "Danny, I need a favor. Think you can help me?" Danny saw that Max was serious and asked, "What kind of favor?" Max said, "I need you to hack into every CCTV footage near my house." Danny looked at Max again and said, "Dude, what happened? You got robbed or something?" Max said, "You'll know when you see it." Danny just said, "Sure, come on in. But why are you so tensed? Chill out, man." Max nodded to him and went inside. Inside his room, Danny sat in front of Lot laptop and said, "Dude, you should know this is illegal, but anyways, this is the first time you're asking as a favor. Can't deny that. Let me see what I can do." Soon he accessed every CCTV near Max's house. Max took the laptop and started his search. After nearly 10 minutes of searching, Max found a suspicious figure walking around his house. Max found him quite familiar, but he couldn't guess who it was. Soon that guy easily used most of the blind spots in the area to escape from the CCTV coverage. After a few minutes, Max found the same figure few blocks away from his house boarding a car and drove off. Max quickly noted the license plate and told Danny, "Danny, thank you. I owe you big time." Danny just waved his hand and said, yeah. So you're coming to school from tomorrow?" Max said, "Yeah, I'll see you in class tomorrow." After that he went off quickly. Danny, who was sitting in his room, decided to snoop around and started to check the footage that was supposedly near Max's house. Max gave the sheriff a call and said, "Sheriff Stilinski." Stilinski from the other side said, "Yeah. Who?" Max said, "It's me, Max. Chris Argent's son." Stilinski replied with a laugh, "What's up, Max? I heard you came back to town. You planning to go back to school?" Max just ignored all the questions and said, "Sheriff, I have a problem. It's an emergency. Someone shot at our house and drove off. I got the license plate of the car." Stilinski, hearing this, got serious and said, "Okay. Text me that." Max said, "I'll do that right now." And he hung up the call and texted him the license plate info. Max then went to home to check on Allison. By the time he reached there, almost everyone from his group were there. He just told everyone to rest for the day and went inside. At this time nobody dared to question him, cause they knew that Max was pissed. Chapter 53 Jaime. The next day morning, Sheriff Stilinski came to the Argent's house and greeted them. Then he said, "About the person who attacked here, well, we kinda found some info. But I thought it would be better if we discuss it here." Chris asked, "Is it something serious?" Stilinski said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I think you should see this." Then he took out a pendrive. Max took it and opened it in his computer. There were a lot of video clips. He looked at Stilinski and asked, "Which one?" Stilinski said, "Play any of them. You'll easily see the shooter's face in all of them." Max played the first video. In that he saw a guy wearing a cap buying some groceries, but when he lifted his head and his face was clearly shown in the display. As soon as Max and Chris saw this, they were shocked. Max said, "So it's you, huh?" Then he turned to Stilinski and said, "Thank you, Sheriff." Chris also said, "He's failing. So I don't think we need to make a big issue, do we?" Stilinski said, "I knew that it was going to be something like this. That's why I didn't directly go to catch him. But I think you should press charges." Chris said, "I think I'll give him a warning. If I press charges, his future will be spoiled. He is a kid, not to mention family. We'll talk to him, Sheriff." Stilinski looked at him, said, "Your wish. He's in the motel near the Beacon County Hospital. Room number 13. You owe me one, Mr. Argent." Chris just smiled at him and said, "I sure do. And let's try to keep it under wraps. I don't think it's good to let too many people know about this." Stilinski just said, "Well, just try not to make a mess." And he left. Chris saw that Stilinski left, turned to Max and asked, "Are you gonna do it, or should I?" Max smiled and said, "I have special plans for him. After all, he is my cousin." Max then took some of his tools and went towards the motel. But before he reached there, the same car which he saw in CCTV footage drove off. Max tried to sense who was inside, but he could barely get a read on the guy, so Max knew that this was Jaime who was hiding from him. So Max decided to follow him and see where he goes. But before he started to follow him, he made a few shadow clones and sent them to protect his friends and family. Soon Jaime reached the edge of town. Max, who was following him at this time, got a call from Araya. He asked, "What is it?" Araya on from the other side said, "You wanted to know who it is, right? It's your cousin." Max just said, "I already know that. And I'm already following him. You barely provided anything." Araya was surprised hearing this, but she still continued, "Just so you know, he's an alpha Warajagar. Too rare. Huh." Max faintly said, "I don't care what he is now. He'll die by the end of the day. You don't have to bother me anymore. By the time he finished his phone call, Jaime's car had already reached few miles outside of town. Jaime at this time got out of the car and started walking. Max just quietly followed him. But suddenly Jaime shouted, "Now!" Max, who heard this, suddenly felt like being pressured, but this was nothing to him as he had practiced a lot with Deina. But to make Jaime a little happy before he brings him utter despair, he decided to oblige and kneeled down and acted like he was under heavy pressure. As he knelt down, nearly 10 witches surrounded him and drew a circle around him using salt and other dark objects. Jaime came in front of him and kept smiling at him, the child prodigy of the Argent family. "Look at how you are now." The witches, after forming a barrier around him, released the pressure and nodded to Jaime. Max, who felt the pressure released, decided to stand up and smiled at Jaime and said, "Well, I'd say it's good to see you alive, but I'd be lying. Did Gerard keep you alive after you got bit?" Jaime's eyes glowed red as he growled and said, "Don't you dare say his name. He took me in when I was starving and dying. He kept me alive even when I was bitten. He cared about me more than anyone, but you killed him. Now you'll slowly see everyone around you die. Soon you'll know how I feel." Max just smiled at him and said, "So this is your plan, huh? Well, I already figured it was something like this." Jaime calmed down and said, "But, Maxwell, I didn't expect you to have so many enemies. Witches from New Orleans were very pleased to help me take you down. And let's not forget your friend Jackson. He was already out for blood. I sure hope your girlfriend survives Jackson and a dozen berserkers attack. Oh, I already took care of the mountain ash barrier and your house with some help." Ha 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 ha. Max didn't even flinch. He kept his calm smile and said, "I knew you'd do something like this. You already fooled me twice. Do you really think you can fool me a third time?" Jaime, hearing this, felt something was wrong, so he suddenly took out a shotgun and held it pointed towards Max. But Max just kept smiling at him and said, "Today anyone and everyone that came with you will die, including you." Jaime said, "I think you're forgetting that you're trapped here." Max again smiled at him, but a voice came from Jaime's back, "Actually, I'm not." And there Max, who was inside the barrier, went poof and turned to smoke. Jaime, watching this, knew that his entire plan got screwed. But before he or the witches could do anything, Max threw a few nails with his key and killed all the witches and paralyzed Jaime. Max came by his side and said, "We're gonna have some family time of our own, cousin." As he said this, he carried Jaime with him. Chapter 54. Tying up loose ends. In Max's home, Selena and Deina were cooking in the kitchen while chatting. Deina asked, "How long have you guys been together?" Selena said, "I don't know. I mean, I liked him since we were young, but we never were like living together and all. Nearly a year ago we came together, and after some time we started living together." Deina nodded hearing this and said, Selena asked, "Don't take this the wrong way, but I'd really like to know this. Do you like Max?" Deina just looked at her and said, "Well, there's no simple answer for this. To tell the truth, I admire him for his strength and character. You could even say he's role model. So yeah, I do like him, but not the way you and him like each other. My way of liking him is like a respect which you give to someone." Selena, hearing this, smiled. "Sighs, you know, I was actually worried that you'd fall for him. Now that you put it like this, I'm feeling a lot less worried." Deina just laughed and said, He, you don't have to worry about me. I'll be staying here till I gain my magic, after that I'll move out." Selene said, Now, don't say like that. First you have to go to school, and there's also the thing about job. You can't just go ahead and buy a house like that, right? Hang out here. I'm also bored living here. You know, most of the time he won't even be here." At this time Max's voice came. "Well, aren't you guys having fun?" They were startled as soon as his voice came, but then they calmed down. Selena said, "Don't suddenly scare us like that." Deina also said, "Yeah, Max. You know, you nearly gave me a heart attack." Max grinned hearing their complaint. Say that he got serious and said, "Well, be soon getting company. So I suggest you get prepared." Selene came near and smelled him and said, "You're a clone, aren't you?" Max nodded and said, "Yeah. Main body is dealing with the Werajagar. And more of me are outside guarding." And went out. Selena took Deina to her bedroom and stayed with her. Deina looked up at her as asked, Aren't you going to help him? Selena shook her head and said, he can handle this. I'll just be in his way. After waiting for a few minutes, a few berserkers came in with Econima Jackson leading them. But before they could even reach the house, Max's clones charged up key balls and started smashing in their faces. And Jackson, who was in the middle, didn't even know what happened. Even before he could think of anything, all the berserkers were anything. And what confused him the most was watching Max, actually Max's 6 clones. He didn't know why there were 6 Maxes. Then quickly all the clones surrounded him. One of Max's clones stepped on his tail, pinning it to the ground. Another one swept his legs, making Jackson fall backwards. 2 other clones stepped on his chest, and one of them said, I'm gonna enjoy ripping that skin off your face. And punched Jackson's face, breaking his nose. Due to the force of impact, Jackson got knocked out. 2 of Max's clones carried him away. After this happened, Max sent a text to everyone, telling them to meet up at Derek's old house. Derek, who was already at his house, was confused. He didn't know why Max called everyone to his house. But his confusion was cleared soon, as Max came in carrying an unknown guy, but Derek knew that this guy was someone important. After Max placing Jaime inside, drew a mountain ash circle around him and went out. As he came out, he saw Derek looking at him with a questioning glance. Max looked at him and said, let's wait till everyone comes. I'll explain. But after a few minutes, couple of Max's clones came in dragging a knocked out Jackson. They just went inside and placed him inside the mountain ash barrier and undid the jutsu. Nearly a half an hour passed for everyone to come. Allison was still resting in home, so she didn't come. Max saw that everyone was here and said, guys, I already caught the Werajagar that's been troubling us. And as bonus, I also got Jackson, who was about to make a comeback. Everyone was shocked hearing this. At this time, Scott asked with yellow eyes, is Werajagar the one who shot Allison? Max looked at him and said, calm yourself down, Scott. Everyone come inside, I'll introduce you to them. Everyone went in and saw a youth similar to their age placed inside the barrier with Jackson. Max looked at them and said, he's Jaime. He's kind of like a cousin to me. At the same time, he an alpha Werajagar. Everyone hearing this was shocked. They expected the new guy to be some old enemy, but they didn't expect him to be Max's cousin. Derek at this time asked, what do you mean, kind of like a cousin? Max said, when me and Gerard had our fallout a decade ago, he knew that he wouldn't get his way around me. So he adopted this guy and taught him his old sick ways of being a hunter. Derek and Selena were disgusted hearing this. They were the ones who suffered because of Gerard. Max looked at them for a few seconds and continued, Gerard kinda wanted someone to inherit his will. Jaime's mind was twisted since he was young. But to his demise, he was bitten by an alpha 5 years ago. According to family rules, he was supposed to be killed. So Gerard was supposed to finish him off. But he kept him alive from the past 5 years, and none of us knew that. We all thought that he was dead. Hearing this, Derek was confused. Gerard hated werewolves and other shapeshifters to his core. Why would he keep him alive? Max said, actually Gerard killed all kinds of shapeshifters for money. And he himself wanted to turn into a werewolf. Derek was shocked hearing this, what? Then all my family was killed for money? Derek's eyes started to glow deep red hearing this, who? Who was paying him? Max said, I discovered this the day I killed him. And I'll fully investigate this. Before that I won't tell you anything. So calm yourself, Derek. Derek calmed down, but still he asked the thing which was bothering him, but why did Gerard wanted to turn into a werewolf? Max smiled and said, he had cancer. We all know that there's no cure for that when it's too late. So he wanted to turn into a werewolf. With werewolf's regeneration, he thought that his cancer could be cured. At this time Isaac shouted, what? Does that mean that we won't have cancer in our entire life? Max facepalms himself and said, you've been a werewolf for such a long time and you still don't know how far your regeneration goes. Derek, what did you even teach them? Derek didn't say anything. Max then continued, okay. Back to the main topic at hand. Jaime came here and created trouble for everyone because I killed Gerard and Kate. Gerard taught him, and Kate took care of him. Sounds weird, right? Scott and Styles nodded. Max said, well, that's the truth. He wanted revenge, so he wanted to take everything away from me. That's why he was just using 6 berserkers to simply bother you. Then as soon as I came into town he started to get serious. That's why all the bombs and shooting and dozens of berserkers, all of these just for me. Scott asked him, then why didn't you just kill him? Max smiled and said, I have another purpose for bringing him here. His death won't be a swift one. Okay, let's just wake him up. After that Max went near Jaime and took out the small nail that was stuck behind Jaime's neck which had paralyzed him. After that Max slapped him twice and woke him up. Wakey wakey, cousin. Chapter 55 Jaime's Madness. Jaime, who was slapped and woken up, saw Max and his friends standing around him. This time though he wasn't agitated. He looked at Max and said, oh, cousin, I heard Allison was shot. How is she? All he got in reply was a punch to his face from Max. Jaime just sat there and laughed, ha ha ha. I didn't expect you to carry vampire blood. This is a surprise, Maxwell. Max looked him and asked, is that gonna be your last words? Jaime kept his smile and said, maybe or maybe not. But if I did I sure am gonna miss that priceless lol on your face when this town goes to Kingdom Come. Ha 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 ha. He again started to laugh madly. Everyone hearing this frowned. Derek asked Jaime, what are you talking about, kid? Jaime didn't even glance at him. He just kept staring at Max and asked, so what are you gonna do, Max? Are you gonna try anything to make me talk, Maxwell? Max didn't know if Jaime was bluffing or seriously telling the truth. Jaime, seeing that Max didn't believe him, so he said, oh, still doubting are we? Then check under the stairs of this house. I've kept similar stuff around town. Selena immediately went out of room to check. After half a minute she came back carrying around 5 pounds of C4 connected to some wires and stuff. Everyone froze watching this. Jaime laughed at everyone's reaction, ha 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 ha. See, no matter how I look, Maxwell, you'll still have to play under my thumb. Max immediately punched him, then kicked his knee and broke his kneecap. Jaime just continued with his mad laughter, ha 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 ha. Everything is rigged with a timer. At evening 5 o'clock Beacon Hills is gonna go bye-bye. Everyone were furious hearing this. Max then again broke Jaime's arms and shattered his bones. Where is it? Where are the bombs? Jaime laughed madly and said, is that all you got, Maxwell? I heard from Grandpa that you're strong and ruthless. But you're such a disappointment. Ha 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 ha. Max knew that he's not gonna get anything from Jaime. He turned to everyone and said, guys, he's not gonna talk. Gerard is a sadist. I think he basically broke him over and over again. He's not gonna talk no matter how much torture he goes through. Styles asked him, can we tell my dad and make him do a sweep throughout the town? Max's eyes lit up. He said, that's good idea. But we can't let him know that it's us. We need to call in an anonymous bomb threat. Styles said, but he won't put much though if it's an anonymous call. We all need to bring him there and tell him everything. Max said, don't worry about him believing. Selena, pass me that bomb. He took the bomb from Selena. Then he took out a phone and passed it to Derek and said, Derek, 5 minutes after I leave, you can the sheriff and tell him there's a bomb on the roof of the sheriff's department. That phone is untraceable and there's a voice modulator, so don't worry about anything. Then Max turned to Jaime and said, I'll come back and take care of you. Then he flew off into the sky. 5 minutes after Max leaving, Derek decided to call the sheriff's department and announce the bomb threat. At first they didn't believe him, but after checking a CCTV finding it there's actually a bomb there, they were really scared. Derek then said that he had placed bombs like that all over town and it'll go off at 5 o'clock in evening. By the time he finished his phone call Max also came back. How did it go? Derek said, they bought it. They'll sweep the whole town soon. At this time Jaime interrupted, oh, did I say it was 5 o'clock in the evening? Maybe I was wrong. I think it could go off at 1 o'clock in afternoon. Ha 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 ha. He started his mad laughter again. Everyone hearing this frowned. Max then said, guys, we can't trust him. First off, go and search around your house and make sure your family is safe. And check nearby your houses too. We'll meet up here in exactly an hour. Everyone nodded. Derek decided to search around his house to find out if there was any more bombs. Max went to his house and checked it thoroughly 3 times but he didn't find anything. After that he went to his parents' house. and started searching. He found the first bomb in the lawnmower that was in front of his house and the second bomb in the attic. By the time he was finished, it was almost an hour. He made 2 more shadow clones and decided to take his family out of town. After that, he decided to head back to Derek's house. When he reached there, everyone were there holding a few bombs in their hands. Boyd said, "Max, I don't know how many he kept, but I could only find 1. If he had kept any more, I don't know what will happen." Stiles also said, "Max, I found 1 in my car and 3 more in my house. There could be more, but these alone were hidden pretty well. He needs to talk if we really want to find all of them." Scott said, "Max, we have to win every time to succeed, but he only needs to win once to turn all-out success into a failure. We gotta get him to talk, Max." Everyone said their reasons. And Max also knew that it was almost impossible to hurry him to talk. But still, he decided to take one last chance. They all went inside to be Jaime. Jaime, watching Max holding 2 bombs, said, "You only found 2. I could have sworn I placed 5 in your dad's place, or was it 6? Ah, who keeps count?" "That's right, I do. Ha 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 ha." Max just smiled at him and said, "You don't have to worry. I already left them at a safe place. A place I know where there is no bomb." Jaime didn't even flinch. He said, "That's good. But can you be sure that the entire town will be safe?" Ha ha ha. Max gritted his teeth and asked, "What do you want?" Jaime smiled and said, "Okay. I'll tell you what I want. I want you to kill your mom and dad. I don't mind about Allison. But you have to kill your parents with your own hand, just like you killed Grandpa and Kate." Max shouted, "You can forget about that. Even if this whole town goes to smithereens, nobody is touching my family." Everyone knew that Max's family is his bottom line. So nobody talked about it. Everyone came out of the room and started to chat. Stiles said, "So what are we gonna do? He's going for Max's family or the town. And we can't let either fall into harm's way." Derek said, "How about we evacuate all our friends, relatives, and anyone we know?" Scott said, "We can't just leave the rest of town's people to die just like that." Derek frowned and said, "Then what do you suggest, Scott?" "Sometimes we should know our limit. We can't save everyone, Scott, but we can't." But he also didn't know what to say. At this time, Deina said, "It would have been good if we could read his mind." As soon as Max heard this, he jumped up and shouted, "Fuck! I got it." And he suddenly went towards the room where Jaime was held. Chapter 56, Saving Beacon Hills. When Max heard Deina say about mind reading, he remembered a still Goku used on Krillin in Planet Namek. Just like that, he stood in front of Jaime and asked, "You know about every one location of the bomb, don't you?" Jaime indifferently said, "So what if I know? I only tell you after your parents are dead by your hands." Max used a nail and pierced behind Jaime's neck, which completely paralyzed him. After that, Max placed his hand on top of Jaime's head and sent his mental energy inside to probe Jaime's memories. Around 5 minutes later, Max opened his eyes and looked at everyone around him and said, "I know where all the bomb is. And it is set to go off at 4 o'clock, not 5. That shithead was playing us." Everyone was surprised hearing this. Max then slapped and woke Jaime up and took out the nail from his neck, then smiled and said, "Jaime, do you wanna see something fun?" Jaime, looking at Max's smile at hearing what he said, felt something was off. But before he could process what was happening, Max took out the untraceable phone, as called the sheriff's department, and told him the location of each and every bomb. Jaime, hearing this, broke down and started roaring, "No. No. No. You can't know this. You can't possibly know this." Max smiled at him and said, "No, I can't. But you know it, so now I know it." Because if Max's info, every deputy in sheriff's department started sweeping the locations. And just as he said, there was a bomb in each and every location. When it reached around 2:30, Sheriff Stilinski was sweating watching all the bombs which were in front of him. He asked one of the deputies, "Is that all of them?" The deputy said, "Yes, Sheriff. 70 locations, 90 bombs. Total amounting up to 400 pounds of C4. Stilinski said, "If this had gone up, our entire town would be off the map by day's end." At this time the phone rang. Stilinski saw that and knew who it was, so he took it. "What do you want now?" A non-discernible voice from the other side said, "Did you get all of it?" Stilinski said. All 90 of it. Yeah. Why did you tell us the location of all the bombs? The voice said, because this is my town. And I don't want anything to happen to it. Stilinski smiled and said, so I take it you didn't plant these bombs. That voice gave out a small chuckle and said, no, I didn't. I had to convince you off the threat, so I placed the first bomb I find on your office's rooftop. Stilinski, but it's still a felony. I'd have to arrest you when I find you. The voice said, that is, if you find me. And by the way, don't look for the bomber. I caught him. And he'll pay for it very dearly. Stilinski frowned and said, don't do anything stupid. Just have him over to us. We'll take care of it from here. But that voice just said, sorry. And hung up. One of the deputy Y was nearby, heard everything and asked, he just saved our entire town. And he also caught the guy who planted the bombs. Who do you think it could be, Sheriff? Stilinski just shook his head and said, I have no idea. But we'll catch him. Sooner or later. We always catch these kinds of guys. Max, who just hung up the call, finally sighed in relief. Then he turned to Jaime. Looks like you took quite some time planning all this. Jaime, who had gotten his entire plan foiled, looked listless sitting on the ground. At this time Max went to Jackson and woke him up by slap treatment. After that he removed all the nails that he planted on Jackson's body. Max looked at him and asked, do you know what just happened today? Jackson didn't reply. He just kept staring at him. Then Max continued, your buddy there planned nearly 400 pounds of C4 all over Beacon Hills. Jackson shook hearing this as he turned to look at the listless Jaime. Then he turned back and glared at everyone standing there. Max looked at him. Now, Jackson, what should we do with you? Because of you Allison nearly got killed that night by Peter. And here you are again, standing against me. Jackson just looked at Max, said, just get it over with. I've got other things to do. Max said, that's the thing. You're not leaving here alive tonight. When Jackson heard this he didn't believe him. He couldn't believe that one of his classmates could kill someone easily and walk away. So he didn't reply. Max turned to Derek and said, check if any of your betas wanna become an alpha. Tell them what they have to do. Derek nodded. He knew that in Beacon Hills they don't have much fighting power, so he also wanted to get more muscle to the team. He turned to Boyd, Erica and Isaac and said, if any of you wanna become an alpha, here's the chance, but you have to kill Jaime. Jackson hearing this snorted, you guys take like you're really planning to kill him. I've had enough of your joke. Jaime, who was listlessly listening, turned to Jackson and said, they're not joking, Jackson. They have already killed a lot. We'll just be one of the many. Jackson was shocked hearing this. He really didn't expect to be standing in the middle of a group of killers. Isaac, Boyd and Erica, who heard that they'd have to kill to become an alpha, they all shook their head. Derek saw that they aren't willing to kill, shook his head to Max. Max just went in front of Jaime and charged few key balls and smashed it directly to Jaime's limbs. Jaime just laughed like he didn't even feel the pain as he said, don't think this is the end, cousin. End of Beacon Hills is coming. I'm just one of the many why wants you dead. I want you to stay alive. As he trailed off. Everyone was confused hearing this. Then Jaime continued, I want you to stay alive and watch as everyone around you dies. Ha 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 ha. His maniacal laughter echoed through the walls. Max hearing this just charged a Rasengan and smashed it at Jaime's face. And with that ended his laughter and his life. Jackson, who was watching this, was shivering. He yelled, Max, don't do anything stupid. If you kill me, my parents will find out sooner or later, then you'll all be thrown in jail. All of you will be thrown in jail. Is that your last words? As Max said while simply charged at Key Ball and was about to throw it at Jackson. Wait. He was suddenly interrupted by a voice. Chapter 57 Return to school. When Max was interrupted, he turned around to see Derek reaching out. Max asked with a frown, what is it, Derek? Derek replied, I think we can use him. You know about Kanima, right? Max thought about it and said, you mean to say, become the master of Kanima? Derek said, yeah, think about it. Kanima instinctively rely on their master. If you were to become its master, he won't be able to trouble you in the future, and at the same time you can let him guard your family even when you're not around. Max had seen Gerard take in Jackson like this in the TV series, but he still wasn't sure how the ceremony was done. So he asked Derek, so how do I become his master? Derek knew that Max had made a decision, so he said, wait till the full moon, it's in a few days. That night we'll do it. Till then let's keep him here. Max nodded hearing this and said, yeah, that works, but I still have to teach him what it means to go against me. After that Max took out his combat knife and laced with wolfsbane and mountain ash and turned to Jackson and started walking towards him. Jackson watching this started screaming, what are you doing? Don't get closer. Stay away. Max just went forward and slashed at Jackson's chest, which left a deep wound. Derek watching this said, well, that's gonna leave a scar. Max said, let him suffer. This wound will not heal for weeks without the proper wolfsbane, now this will teach him not to mess around my family. Max then went to Selena and said, I believe we're done for the day. Have you cooked up something good? I'm starving. Celine just smiled at him and said, we'll talk about food later. Now, don't you think you have something to explain? Max turned and saw everyone looking at him, so he asked, what? Scott asked, how did you know all the locations of the bombs? It's like you literally read Jamie's mind. Everyone was curious about this, even Deina, she also didn't know what kind of magic Max uses. Max knew that he had to come up with some bullshit again, so he thought of a few seconds and replied, it's just like the Hale family alphas use on their betas to read their mind. They usually press the beta's neck, but I don't have to do something drastic like that. At this time Derek said, my mom talked about this once when I was young. I thought that was just some story. But how did you learn this? Max smiled and said, when you travel around the world you'll learn a trick or two here and there. And I'm not telling you where I learned it. Styles hearing this said, Tisk, man. You learn all these weird tricks. Sometimes I even doubt whether you're human or not. Max said, come on guys, you saw that I can use mountain ask and stuff. Scott added from the side, yeah, and we know that Selena can use mountain ash too. How does that even work? Max just laughed and said, ha ha ha. Selena is special. But if you wanna know about me, I'll you after you get stronger than me. Ha 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 ha. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Max then said, okay, guys. Time to go. Scott then asked, are you gonna come to class tomorrow, or will you leave town again? Max said, most definitely. Been a while since I was here. I'm planning to stay till the end of the year. Styles said at this time, yeah. Coach misses you too. He often asks us. Max replied, I'm not gonna play this year. It's taking too much of my time. I decided to practice some new techniques I learned outside. Selena asked, that wouldn't be the same one you practiced near the Neemton, would it? Max smiled and said, that's exactly the one. If I master it, I'll become many times stronger. Styles gasped and said, dude, you gotta teach me that. It's been a while since you taught me anything. Think you can slip a few tricks here and there. Max thought of the gravity-like training and said, I found a way to make our training progress faster. I'll tell you that if you help me take care of Deina. And you also need to be in her good grace to practice it. As Styles heard this, he thought that it was going to be witchcraft. So he nodded and said, don't worry about it. She'll be pleased to stay in this town from here on out. Deina, who was waiting in the car, didn't know what Max was planning on selling her like a training equipment to Styles. After everyone left, Max went near Derek and asked, did you do what I asked you to do? Derek said, I did. But I still don't know why you wanted me to give her the bite. Max said with a serious face, she's an important chess piece in the time to come. She's way more useful than anyone here. You might not understand it, but you'll see in future. Derek replied, I don't know what you're thinking, Max, but I do know that you're hiding a lot of stuff. Keeping secrets from friends and family is only dangerous for them. Max said, some secrets are meant to be secrets, that's why they're called secrets. Derek just shook his head. After that Max left with Selena and Deina. Next day in school everyone was surprised to hear that Max transferred back, and they also found out that a new girl also transferred with him. Max went to find his usual seat, which was beside Selena, but he found that some other guy was sitting there. He went to him and said, can you please move to the next chair? I used to sit here before you. So would you mind? The guy replied with a frown, get lost, asshole. I've been here since the beginning of the year. After that he turned back to Selena, totally ignoring Max, and said, Selena, you know about what I said before. You know that I'm good at photography. Selena said to him, I'm sorry about this, Matt. Then turned to Max and said, go easy on him, Max. He doesn't know anything. Matt asked, wait, what do you mean? But he wasn't able to finish his sentence, as Max held him by his throat and lifted him up from his seat and said, who do you think you are, huh? I was only polite because I'm coming after a long time, not because I'm afraid of you, asshole. After that Max gave a light punch to his gut, but that was a heavy blow for Matt. Then Max threw him to the side and sat back in his seat. Scott, who was watching this, facepalms himself and said, dude, this is not training ground where you punch everyone. Restrain yourself. Max just laughed and said, that reminds me. From this week I'll be joining in the training, right? You guys better keep up the pace. Ha 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 ha. Hearing this, Scott, Styles, Isaac, Boyd and Erica all turned their head towards him. Styles asked, dude, do you still need more training? Max just replied, I still have lot of tricks to learn. And you all are the test subjects, ha ha ha. He continued laughing for a while, then asked, hey, Styles, what happened to Lydia? I don't see her here. Styles replied with a sour face, she's been kinda absent-minded ever since the beginning of the year. She's totally changed, she looks more like she's scared or under depression. I don't know what's wrong with her. Max then simply said, oh, and started to think of ways to help Lydia. Chapter 58 Photos. When Max was thinking, Danny came into class and saw Max. As soon as he saw Max, he ran towards him and said, Max, we need to talk. It's about day before yesterday. Meet me after school. Max thought about it and nodded, okay. I still owe you one anyways. Danny also nodded, and just as he was about to sit in his seat, he turned to Max and asked, how are you sitting here, Max? Matt sits here every day and he never did give up the seat. Max frowned. He won't give up the seat here to anyone, huh? Why is that? Danny nonchalantly said, oh, he's been pestering Selena for months to be a model for his photography, but she's been avoiding him. But after saying that, Danny realized that Max was Selena's boyfriend. He immediately said, Max, you did not hear that from me. But all the werewolves in class plus Styles heard this. They all thought one word in their mind, shit. Max then looked towards Matt, who was sitting in the corner of the room with rage-filled eyes. But Scott and Boyd immediately held him and said, after class. Don't do anything now. Selena said, if you're so jealous, then don't leave. But she was secretly happy seeing Max all filled with jealousy. She knew why Max was doing this. Just like him, she was also very possessive towards him, but she wasn't upfront like him. Max shouts, I'm not jealous. He's been kinda irritating from the moment I saw him. Selena laughed at him and sarcastically said, yeah, you've known him for months, right? Max didn't reply to this. He just muttered something and waited for Deina and Allison to enter the class. Soon Allison brought in Deina. Everyone was curious as to how the new girl is like, because they had only heard about Max and Davina's transfer from their coach. Deina went to the empty seat where Lydia usually sits. And looked at Styles sitting beside her and said, hi. Styles turned to Deina and said, don't be too stiff. You almost know everyone around here. Wait, I'll introduce you to Danny. You could say that everyone likes him. He's a friendly guy. Oh, and missed a great show just now. You could have come in a bit early. Max was about to go on a rampage because of. He wasn't able to finish his sentence as Deina interrupted him and said, Styles. Slow down. You can talk about that later. At this time Allison asked, what happened to Max? Did he do something crazy? Scott, who was beside her, replied, well, he kinda learned about the new photographer. Allison frowns and asked, did you guys tell him? Me and Selena were planning to let him know later this evening. Scott immediately waved his hand and said, not me. Matt screwed himself. And Danny told Max. Allison sighed and said to Max, Max, he's been bothering Selena from a long time. Make sure you teach him. And check his camera. He always sneakily takes pictures of everyone. Max calmed himself and smiled at her and said, why, my little sister? I don't suppose you're jealous because he's only bothering Selena, are you? Allison shouted, don't you, little sister, me. Well, anyways, she's your girlfriend. Don't let him snatch her away. When Max heard this, he almost broke the desk he was sitting in by his grip, but soon he calmed down and asked, "You were saying something about him taking pictures sneakily. Talk about it." At this time Selena said, "Oh, he's been taking pictures of everyone. Some people already complained in the principal's office, but they didn't say anything." Max nodded hearing this. He actually knew about Matt from the TV series, as Matt was the original master of Kanima, but here, because of his interference, Matt was just a normal, psychotic, photographer in school class. Soon the class started, one after the other went on. Davina, who was new to this, was having a tough time, but Styles helped her out here and there most of the time. As the class ended, Max, Scott, Styles, Boyd and Isaac decided to make a plan, when they were any to leave Danny caught up with them. Danny said to them, "So where are you guys going? Are you going to fly then home, Max?" As soon as they heard this, they all focused on Danny. Max asked, "What do you mean?" Danny said to Max, "Oh, please, Max. If you're flying around in town, check whether there are any CCTV nearby when you fly or land. And as for you guys, try not to show your claws everywhere," he said to the rest of them. Isaac asked Max, "Do we take him away right now?" Max shook his head and asked Danny, "What are you trying here, Danny? You know this could get you in trouble, right?" Danny smiled and replied, "No, you guys could have gotten into trouble. You guys were like all over the CCTV footages through Beacon Hills. I spent my entire day removing you guys from the clips, which goes back for like months." Scott said, "Shit, we never did consider hiding from CCTV." Danny then said, "Especially to Max. You've been flying around ever since you came here." Max said, "Okay, Danny. We all owe you one. So tell me, what do you want?" Danny said with a smile, "Well, you guys are having this thing and I want in. And, Max, you owe me too." Max said, wait. What do you mean you want in? Do you even know what you're saying?" Danny nodded and said, "I know exactly what I'm saying. I have into the sheriff's radio yesterday, and guess what I heard? I heard that our entire town was about to go sky high and someone miraculously informed them of all the bombs' location in time, saving the town. Now who else could it be, huh?" Styles from the side said to Max, "Dude, you're busted." Max frowned and said, "Let's talk about that later. For now, keep up with us." Then he started walking away. As they were walking, Max said, "Guys, this time, we'll catch him in the act. That fucking asshole thinks he can mess around with my girl. Well, he's got another thing coming." Boyd said to Isaac, "Well, this isn't gonna end well." Danny asked Styles, "Is he talking about Matt or Boyd?" Styles laughed and said, "Ha ha ha, Boyd had his turn. Today it's Matt's." After a few minutes they reached the parking lot, but they didn't go further, they hid themselves in the corner. While they were hiding there, the girls all made their way near their car and stood there chatting with each other. At this time Matt, who came out, saw that their girls were alone and took out his camera and started taking pictures of them. When he was about to take the third picture, he felt someone else holding his camera and covering the lens. He looked up only to see Max, Scott, Styles, Isaac, Boyd and Danny all standing around him. Max said, "Guys, peers go near the pool. I think someone here needs to go to a swim." Matt shouted, "What are guys doing? Let me go. I was just taking pictures." Max took his camera and said, "Yeah, pictures of my girlfriend, my sister and my friends without their permission. So now you'll learn what happens to stalkers." After that they started dragging away Matt. Danny, who was with them, asked, "We aren't gonna kill him, right?" Max smiled and said, "That depends entirely on the pictures he took of them." After that Max started to go through Matt's camera. After a few minutes Max handed the camera to Danny and said to everyone, "Guys, he's been taking pictures of our girls from a long time. Hell, he even took Davina's pictures throughout the class." Max then turned to Danny and handed him Matt's bag. "Check the laptop inside. See if there are any more he's hiding." Max then turned to Matt and said, "This is gonna be my last warning. Stay away from the girls, and if you take another picture of any of them, I'll fucking kill you." After saying that, Max threw him inside the huge swimming pool. Danny, who was holding the laptop, said, "Max, it's password encrypted." Max asked, "So, can you do it?" Danny said, "Yeah, I can. But it'll take a long time." Why don't you ask him for the password? Max thought about it and went near the pool and dragged out the drowning Matt and asked him, now you're gonna tell me the password to the laptop, or you'll again go back in the water. Matt shivered thinking about drowning, so he immediately said, the password is. Please don't throw me in. I won't do it again. Danny, who heard their password, checked it and opened the laptop. Soon he went through all the files and found nearly 1,000 pictures of girls. And he even found pictures of some cheerleaders in their locker room. He then said to everyone, guys, this is bad. He got tons of photographs. Max frowned and said, format the entire drive. After that, give the laptop here. Matt shouted from the side, no. Don't. I'll delete all the pics from the school. Don't clear out the drive. But nobody listened to him. Danny just formatted it without thinking of anything. Even he knew that it was inappropriate to take pictures like these. After that, he handed the laptop to Max. Max just broke the laptop and threw it in the pool. He also took the memory chip from the camera and destroyed both the camera and the memory card. Then he said to Matt, if you wanna bill me, bill me. After that, he gave a punch to Matt's face and they all left. Chapter 59, Training New Skills. After they left, Matt stayed there for a long time beside the pool. Then he stood up with eyes filled with hatred and said, Max, you'll pay for this. You'll pay for this very badly. And went out. When Max and others reached near the car, Max said to Danny, I'll send you a location. You come by on weekends after class. Danny nodded. He didn't know why, but he felt that this was going to be important. Soon everyone took their own rides and went home. While they were in the way, Max asked Allison, do you check with Lydia? Allison nodded and said, I went to her place last week. She was kinda like. Allison trailed off as she didn't know how to say it to Max. Max said, crazy, right? Allison nodded. Yeah, she was kinda crazy. She said that she was hearing voices. Deina frowned hearing this and said, this could probably be related to supernatural event. Max said, well, actually you don't have to worry too much. I know what this is. We'll talk to her later. Okay. Celine was surprised hearing this and asked, what did you do, Max? Max just laughed and said, ha ha ha. You'll know soon. Soon the weekend came, and with that Danny also joined them. Max explained everything that happened in town and introduced everyone's ability to Danny and put him to train with Styles and Allison. But to what surprised everyone was that Deina wanted to train with them. They all knew that she was a witch and it was useless to her, but they let her join in. And later that month on the full moon, Derek helped Max become Jackson's master, and by the end of the month Deina gained a bit of her own magic powers. Then Max also noticed that, by training Deina in his meditation techniques, he was able to gain back his magic at a faster pace. After that month, Jackson also came back to school, which surprised everyone. Coach immediately put him back in lacrosse team. Coach also pestered Max often, but Max said that he missed his studies and slipped away from him often. All this time Max was practicing instant transmission, as he was only using his abilities to just search for key size around town. But after he started to practice instant transmission, he was able to locate people who were outside of his town as well. After a month of practice with his shadow clones, Max was freely telephoning throughout the town. But he didn't tell his friends that he was able to teleport. He wanted to keep it as a secret which he could use sometime later. Now that Jackson was also a part of their group, he also joined them in training every weekend. But one day suddenly said that he wanted to train alone and went off to Neamton to practice Sage Mode. It took him 2 months and 20 shadow clones to get in an average control of Sage Mode. But there was one fatal flaw to it. Whenever he goes into Sage Mode, his entire body turns light green and he has an eye shadow of dark green. But this was enough for him to enhance his senses that enabled him to use key sense to sense people more than 100 miles away. After learning instant transmission and Sage Mode, he felt a bit relieved, because he was able to sense many different kinds of energies inside him. He didn't know how many types there are because there were too many to count. If he were to describe it in a word, it'll be chaos. Max knew that one of these energies might be dimensional energy, which God told him about. He even suspected that with one of these energies he could even practice witchcraft, but he didn't have time to do so. Over the past few months, Max also found out that Deina's magic was growing at an unprecedented rate. Watching this, Max came to conclusion that Deina might even become the strongest witch of this century. Once Davina also asked him about her growing magic, Max didn't give her a proper reply. But he knew that this was Neemton's gift to her as she gave away her connection to her ancestors to Neemton. Because of that, Max also noticed Neemton channeling the magic from Davina's ancestors. He knew that if this keeps up, 3 ancestors' magic will run dry and the halo will be released sooner than expected, but he couldn't do anything as he didn't know much about Neemton. Max even once wanted to destroy Neemton, but thought about how the town was being protected by some sort of barrier which weakens witches and repels vampires, and concluded that it must be related to Neemton and decided not to do anything stupid. Now it was after 3.5 months of training Max decided to join in with the others. Everyone was surprised that Max came back here to train with them. Styles, who saw this, immediately asked Max, "So did you learn something new?" Max nodded. Max knew why Styles was asking this. Because Styles, who was also human, thought that whatever Max learned he'll also be able to learn it in the future. But Max wasn't going to tell him that he was special, and he asked God for a wish to manipulate energies. He just smiled at him and asked everyone, "You guys wanna spar with me to see my new technique?" Scott immediately nodded and said, "Well, I'll go first. I also want to see what you learned this time." Max said, "Give me a moment." After that he stood still for half a minute and slowly his body turned green. Derek, who was watching Max, frowned, and asked him, "What happened to you? I feel like you're just a tree standing there still." Max opened to greenish pupilled eyes and said, "I just absorbed the energies which were nearby." After that he took a black cloth and blindfolded himself. Scott asked, "Are you sure you wanna fight blind?" Max turned to Scott and said, "You'll know when you try." After hearing this, Scott ran towards him and threw a jab, but to his surprise Max easily leaned his body to the right and slipped past him. Derek, who saw this, said to Scott, "Try not to make any noise, Scott." Taking Derek's advice, Scott moved elegantly and threw few jabs and cross and a few kicks, but Max didn't let a single hit land on him as he easily moved around Scott. Derek, watching this, came to Boyd and Isaac and whispered in their ears, "You guys slowly move towards him. When you see that he has his back turned towards you, both of you take him down." Both of them nodded and slowly made their way towards Max. Max, who sensed them, just smiled and continued his spar with Scott. When they silently reached near Max, Max held his back towards them as he easily slipped Scott's punches. Isaac and Boyd saw that they had gotten their chance, jumped at Max from his back. As they reached a few inches from Max, Max simply ducked and let them fly over him and crash onto Scott, who was kicking at Max. After that Max took out his blindfold and laughed, "Ha ha ha ha. Boyd, Isaac, I didn't know that you liked Scott that much. Ha ha ha." When he continued laughing, his greenness slowly faded away as he quit sage mode. Derek came to his side and asked, "So you're able to sense everything around you, huh? Nice trick. But that's not gonna be of much, and it's taking some time for you to absorb energies. It's not of much use if it doesn't make you stronger." Max smiled at him and said, "Actually, I'm working on shortening the absorption time." "Oh, and you saw that I didn't hit Scott while sparring, right? It's because when I'm like that my strength increases more than a tenfold. So if I were to hit him by mistake, I'll put him in a precarious situation." Everyone who heard this was shocked, especially Selena and Derek, as they already had an estimate to Max's strength. Danny, who didn't know much about Max's supernatural side, asked with curiosity, "So who taught you this technique?" Everyone knew that Max wasn't going to give them a straight answer, but they were also curious. Max looked at everyone and said, "Oh, when I left Beacon Hills before this, I had to go to a mountain range. There a blind hermit taught me. He said that only sages could practice this." Everyone except for Danny and Jackson thought, "Here he goes with his never-ending lies." Jackson and Danny, who heard this, were thinking which mountain it could be. Styles said at this time, "And you're not gonna tell us which mountain that is, right?" Max smiled and nodded, "Yup." Chapter 60 Realization. Matt, who used to be a popular photographer, was now hiding in toilet from a group of lacrosse players. This all started around 3 months ago. After his confrontation with Max's group, someone had spread word about him taking pictures of girls in their locker rooms. Even though there was no hard evidence, he knew that his reputation was down the drain because of the rumor. Ever since then he was being bullied by a lot of people. And today all he did was take a few pictures when the guys were playing lacrosse, but the lacrosse team took it the bad way and started to chase him. He knew all this was because of Max. His frustration and hatred for Max head grew day by day. Especially whenever he thinks of the time when Max threw him in the swimming pool, he feels like he wants to kill him. Just as he was thinking of these things, his phone vibrated. He looked up and saw the mail from a media company regarding his job appointment. He smiled looking at this and thought, it's time to put an end to you, Max. He waited in the toilet for few more minutes to make sure that none of the lacrosse players were there. After that he left for his home. Max was watching TV with Selena and Deina. Deina kept on pestering him about getting her a part-time job. So, do you think that doctor will agree for me to work there? Selena cheerfully replied to her, Uncle Deina is very kind. He wouldn't mind. And he's also a druid, so since you're a witch he'd be more interested in taking you in. Maxon said, well, I can't argue with that. But try not to use any spells around the clinic. I think he has a range that plays foolproof for any supernatural attacks. We don't want to mess that up. Deina nodded hearing this and asked, so how do you two know him? Selena said, well, it's a long story. We'll tell you about that some other time. Max looked at her and said, well, we owe him a lot. And we've known him since we were kids, so you don't need to keep your guard around high. Max suddenly stopped and frowned as he sensed someone walking towards his house through the forest. As soon as he focused he knew who it was. Max looked at Selena and Deina and said, ladies, I have to meet an acquaintance. After that he got up from the couch and walked out through the back door. As soon as Max came out he saw Matt walking towards here from a distance. Max watching this also started walking towards him. As soon as Max reached Matt, he looked him and asked, what do you think you're doing here, Matt? Matt was surprised that Max found him in the dark forest, but at the same time he was relieved that there'd be no witness when he kills Max. He suddenly took out a gun from his pocket and pointed it at Max and said, what do you think I'm here for, Max? I'm obviously here for you. Max frowned as he saw Matt pointing the gun at him. Matt saw that Max was silent and continued, what happened now? Aren't you gonna say something? I know, you must be scared shit in front of a gun, aren't you? Let me guess, this must be your first time looking at a gun, right? Well, don't worry. This will also be the last time, 'cause you're not leave here alive. Max didn't speak. And just as Matt was about to pull the trigger, Max moved instantly and held the gun from the front, putting his finger behind the trigger, totally blocking it from moving back. Matt was scared when he saw Max easily holding the gun from the front. He tried to pull the trigger but it was blocked by Max's finger. He was thinking about his next move when he heard Max say, I'm sorry, Matt. Actually I didn't want to kill you, but you made a mistake by coming here tonight. After that Matt felt the vision of his surroundings change. He could see that they were still in the forest, but he couldn't see Max's house here. But his shock came when he noticed that he wasn't holding the gun anymore and the Max who was in front of him was 10 meters away from him. He looked at Max and shouted, what did you do? Where are we? Max looked at him and said, we're in the forest. Matt, one thing I hate is people threatening me. And you of all people pointed a gun at my face. So it's about time I end you. After saying this Max started to slowly move towards Matt. Matt watching this was scared and shivering. He yelled at Max, Max, don't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I was just doing that on impulse. Just let me leave, I'll get out of town and I'll never come back. He wasn't able to finish his sentence as Max obliterated Matt with a key ball. After that Max just teleported back to his home. And with a few chats with Deina and Selena, Max went to sleep. In his dream the same scene where he killed Matt was repeated over and over again. He didn't know why, but that was kinda bothering him a lot. Soon he woke up in the middle of the night and decided to take a walk. While walking, Max was thinking what happened today. As far as he knew Matt was just an ordinary teenager with a whole life ahead of him. Even though Matt had a disgusting character, never in his life did Matt kill someone according to his memories. Today might have been the first time he's holding a gun at someone. And in school Matt did insult, threatened and humiliated him by letting the rumors spread. At the end of the day Matt was just an obsessive photographer. If Max were to exchange places with and endured all the insults and humiliation, Max was sure that sooner or later he'd surely try to kill the guy responsible, and by this reason Max understood that whatever Matt did today was out of impulse. When he understood that, Max knew he could have let Matt live. He could have just thrown him in Icon House and be done with him. By now Max knew that he killed Matt, just because he was bad in the TV series. He knew that he always saw him in that aspect, and that's why he killed. After thinking till now, Max noticed one thing. In the TV series, Matt really died around this time and Jackson still lived. Not that he thought about it. Jackson threatened his sister once before, and that alone was enough for him to die. And this time he joined Jaime and was about to destroy entire Beacon Hills. But after all this, he still lives, and Matt dies just because he pointed a gun at Matt. Max knew that something wasn't right. He kind of felt like that everything is being manipulated by someone or something like fate. So as Max thought about fate, he knew that because of his interference he did bring a few changes, but at the end of the day everything in Teen Wolf was slowly and steadily running according to the plot. And now he realized something. If fate's interference was true, then there is a chance that Allison might die next year. Thinking of this, Max decided that he'd kill as many as he can to protect everyone around him, especially his family. Now that he made this decision, he felt like he was free. The death of Matt didn't bother him much now. He knows in this world his mentality has been slowly turned into a cold-blooded killer, but he didn't mind it, as long as he and people around him are safe. After a long sigh, he decided to turn and head back. Chapter 61 Problem in New Orleans. As he was walking, a patrol car came beside him and stopped. Stilinski was inside. He asked Max, "What you doing out so late, Max?" Max smiled at him and said, "Couldn't sleep, Sheriff, had to take a walk." Stilinski said to Max, "Hop on, I'll drop you back." Max also didn't mind it. He sat inside and talked with Stilinski. "So Sheriff, long night?" Stilinski said, "Everyone's on high alert since that bomb incident. I had to take long shifts, Max. So what's bothering you so much that you're not sleeping at this time?" Max thought about it and said, "Nah, it's nothing big. I was sleeping and had a nightmare. So I woke up and decided to take a walk." Stilinski remembered something and said, "Now that you mention it, you know that Lydia Martin. How is she? I heard that she was having nightmares from nearly a year. Stiles used to talk about her often." Max replied, "Yeah, we also heard that. Allison visited her last week. I think she's feeling much better now." While they were chatting, Max's phone suddenly rang. He saw that it was a private number. He received it and heard, "Max, it's Elijah here. Do you think?" He was cut off by another voice. "Maxwell Argent, I want you to bring Deina here." Max knows that something's wrong there, so he asked, "Klaus, what happened there? Tell me. I'll be on my way soon." Klaus said from the other side, "Haley and Rebecca were attacked when me and Elijah were out. They fucking attacked them in our mansion. They only left a letter asking for Deina. That's how we know that it's the witches. You bring Deina back here right now. We'll talk about everything later." Max thought of a plan and replied after few seconds, "I'll be there by morning." And hung up. Stilinski, who was watching Max talk on the phone, couldn't help but ask, "You going somewhere, Max?" Max looked at Stilinski and said, "Well, it looks like I'm going out of town for a few days." Stilinski said, "If there's trouble I can make a few calls." "Don't worry, all right." Max smiled looking at him and said, "Thanks, Sheriff." As they kept chatting, they soon reached Max's house. Stilinski drooped him off and said, "You take care, Max. We don't want you missing classes here." Max laughed and said, "Ha ha ha. You won't even notice I was gone." After that, Max went inside. As soon as Max went in, Selena came down from upstairs and asked, "Where were you?" Max frowned and replied, "I'm going out of town. There's a bit of trouble. I want you to make sure everyone's safe in the meantime. I'll leave a clone here just in case." Selena asked, "Are you gonna tell me what it is?" Max said, "Some witches kidnapped a pregnant woman. I don't want you telling this to anyone. We clear on that?" Selena nodded, hearing this, and thought that it must be something to do with Deina. So she didn't ask much questions and said, "Okay. If anyone asks about you, I'll tell them that you went out to meet a friend." Max went ahead and kissed her and said, "No wonder I love you so much. You just read my mind." Hearing this, Selena was pretty happy. After that, she urged him, Okay. Now go and come back soon. I don't want to sleep alone tomorrow night." Max smiled and said, "You already miss your pillow, huh?" Selene pinched him, hearing this, and said in a sweet voice, "You came a day late and you'll be sleeping in the couch." Max sweated hearing this and ran off inside to get some of his tools. After about 5 minutes he took everything and entered sage mode. Selena, looking at this, asked, Do you really want to use that? Max replied, from here to New Orleans is a pretty long distance. I kinda need the extra boost. So see y'all later. After that, Max disappeared. Marcel, who was tired of searching for Haley, was now drinking in Rousseau's bar. But suddenly he saw a greenish silhouette materializing. He didn't think for a second and attached only to be kicked back in the face. Max, who teleported there, saw that Marcel was attacking him, shouted at Marcel, Marcel, it's me, Max Argent. Marcel, who was about to charge a second time, heard this and stopped and looked at Max and asked, what the hell, Max? What's with all this green? Max undid his sage mode and said, I was teleporting from a long distance, that's why all that green and stuff. It's a power boost. I heard Haley was kidnapped, so Klaus wanted me to bring Deina back here. Marcel, hearing this, growled and asked, don't tell me you're planning to bring her. Max shouted and said, do you think I'm crazy? I already have a plan. Let's go meet the witches. I'll tell you in the way. After half an hour, Max and Marcel with a few vampires could be seen standing near the cemetery of the witches. Max walked in without any trouble and shouted, Witches of New Orleans, either you give Haley and Rebecca back or I start destroying all the graves. After saying that, he charged up a key ball in his hand. But the witches who came out didn't seem too afraid. Sophie, who was in the front, replied to Max, we don't care if you destroy it anymore. Because of you, the power of the ancestors are slowly disappearing. When Max heard this, he simply pointed the key ball towards the witches and showed, then how about I kill all of you and take them away? Sophie smiled and said, without our powers we would rather die than live. So go ahead and kill us, but I connected my life force to Haley. So you kill me, you also kill Haley and the child. This was the exact reason Max was hesitating to kill them at sight. So Max lowered his hand and said, I'll give you Deina back right now, but I want Haley and Rebecca back, and remove all those nasty spells of yours. If I find a single spell on them, then you can forget about witches existing in New Orleans after today. Sophie listened to this, as turned to discuss with the other witches behind her. After a few minutes of discussion, Sophie turned to Max and said, we agree. But you give us Deina first. Max nodded and said, okay, but you first bring Haley and Rebecca out and remove the spells. By the time you remove the spells, Deina will be here. After that, Max took out this phone and called someone and said, bring her in. Noticing that Max was calling for Deina, Sophie also told the other witches to bring Haley and Rebecca out. Chapter 62. The harvest ritual begins. After a few minutes, Klaus and Elijah both brought in Deina. Watching this, the witches undid all the spells that were placed on both Haley and Rebecca. As soon as they undid the spells, Deina was returned to the witches. The witches expected Deina to resist a bit, but to their surprise, Deina didn't do anything. She silently followed then inside. After Deina went inside, they released both Haley and Rebecca. Max went to Haley and cut near fingers to see if any of the witches were reacting. But none of them reacted, so he concluded that the spell that connected Haley to Sophie was severed. Haley, who had got cut, yelled at Max, hey, be gentle. I'm a pregnant woman who's about to give birth in a minute. Max just simply ignored that and charged a key ball in his hand and pointed to the witches. Sophie, who saw this, shouted, you're still in our scared ground. You all might be safe if we're to fight, but you can't protect the child. Klaus, who heard this, held Max's hand and shook his head. Max lowered his hand and said to Sophie, you might be safe today, but sooner or later I'll burn you. After that, Max and others left. While going back, Klaus asked, do you think this is going to work? Max smiled and said, we'll know it by morning. Leave some vampires if you wanna hear instant news. Joshua, who was walking behind everyone, asks, why don't we kill all the witches and be done with this ritual thing? Max looked at Joshua and remembered that this was the guy who survived throughout the series. Max smiled and said, the problem is the next supernatural creature convergence. If we do this, then the other supernatural creatures will vote against us. After that, they'll turn on the vampires, and I'm here too. So it'll fall on me as well, even if we can protect ourselves, but the people around us, or the people we care about, or it could even be our whole community, will be free to kill. Max paused for a second and continued, so there must be a balance in things we do. That's why I planned this. After today, those witches will wet their bed hearing Deina's name. Klaus, hearing this, laughed, ha ha ha, how I wish to slaughter them all. Throughout centuries they've been a pain in my ass. I did my fair share of killing them, but with this idea, I feel that playing with them is way better than killing them. Ha 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 ha. Elijah, who was with Haley, asked Max, so you plan to come to this decade's supernatural creature convergence? Max looked at Elijah and said, this time it if special. Everyone had noticed it. Werewolves are missing, and a lot of alphas died recently. And these witches performing child sacrifices. Everyone had reached a new low this decade. And I also need to be there for my girlfriend. Klaus, who heard that Max was planning to come, mocked him. Argent, are you sure you can come? I heard that your father disowned you. You can't come with your father representing the Argent family hunters. Max didn't mind Klaus mocking him. He was also reasonable, so Max thought for a moment and replied, I was planning on coming with Dad. But now that I see that it'll be troublesome, I think I'll represent myself. The Klaus, Elijah and Rebecca were dumbfounded hearing this. Rebecca said to him, if you do that, you'll be in the same position as the first ones. We originals, that Dracula and a few strong were creatures, are the only ones that represents themselves. But the problem will come when you have to prove yourself in front of them. Max simply smiled and said, I don't think that'll be a problem. And if I'm not there, I won't be able to protect my girlfriend. Rebecca asked with curiosity, why would your girlfriend need protection? Klaus, Marcel and Elijah listened in waiting for Max's reply. Max said, she's kinda special. And some people might not be able to keep their hands to themselves. I'll just make sure I keep others in line and show them their place. They knew that there must be a secret, so they didn't dwell in they matter. Klaus just said, I would like to see who makes a move in our presence. Max smiled and replied, we'll just see what happens in future. For now, let's wait for the good news. In the cemetery, Deina was made to stand in front of an altar which was blood red in color. Sophie, who was with the other witches, came in front of Deina and asked, so, traitor, you finally decided to give in to your fate, huh? Deina just smiled at Sophie and said, we'll see. Sophie, who saw the smile on Deina's face and the calm demeanor she's putting out, kinda felt that there was something wrong with Deina, but she can't accurately pinpoint it. When the time reached around 3 a.m., all the witches of the French Quarter gathered. There. Sophie stood in front of everyone and said out loud, witches of the New Orleans, today we're about to complete the harvest ceremony which was supposed to be ended over a year ago. Due to some unforeseen circumstances it was delayed, but not anymore. Today we offer our last and final sacrifice of the harvest ceremony of this century. So let's not delay any further, as the time of ripe, we will end what we started. Clap clap clap. All of a sudden they all heard someone clapping. They all looked around in confusion, but soon they found that the person who was applauding was none other than Deina, who was standing in front of the altar. Agnes, who was with the witches, asked, what do you think you're doing, Deina? Deina smiled at them and asked, I want to know what would happen if you were to sacrifice me, who has no connection to the ancestors. Hearing this, most of the witches were shocked. Sophie shouted, it's impossible to cut off the connection with the ancestors, unless you give up all your magic. Agnes came beside Sophie said, I can feel magic in your body. Which of stronger than out was before you went out? Deina said, I just recultivated my entire magic. Did you really think I was spending months of time enjoying outside? Hearing this, Agnes and Sophie closed their eyes and started chanting a spell together. After a few seconds they suddenly opened their eyes and Sophie said, it's true. She has no trace of ancestral magic on her. Sophie panicked and immediately turned to Agnes and asked, what do we do now? Agnes thought about it and said, we will still proceed as before. After the sacrifice we'll see what the ancestors say. Sophie nodded and took a 30 cm knife from the side and went towards Deina, who was standing near the altar. After she reached Deina, Sophie placed the knife beside Deina's neck and asked, would you like to say something? Deina, who saw that they still decided to kill her, thought for a moment and said, I'll sorry for what I'm about to do. But after today I hope you'll forget about ever planning to kill me. Hearing this, most of the witches were confused as they looked at Deina, but then all of a sudden it happened. Chapter 63. End of the harvest ritual. As soon as Deina said her speech, she immediately took the knife from Sophie's hand and slashed Sophie's neck. The witches, who were confused at first, were immediately shocked by the sudden turn of events. All the witches soon calmed down and started chanting their spells, but Deina didn't give them enough time. She immediately jumped from the altar and started slashing around the witches who were nearby. Some witches had their arms slashed, some had their throats slashed. Agnes, who was chanting a powerful spell, had her face slashed. All the witches didn't even know what happened, they only saw a blurry silhouette and all they could hear was screams of their fellow witches. The witches who were standing in the back couldn't find a proper target to launch their spells as their spells turned out to be useless. Some of them even decided to ran off. After nearly 15 minutes out of 100 witches, 30 were dead, 10 escaped without a scratch as they ran away early on, and 60 witches were brutally crippled. They either had their arms, legs cut off or got slashed in unnatural ways like face, chest, their back, etc. Deina, who did all this, was just standing in the altar looking at get work. After a while Deina said, I only killed a few of you, but try to catch me or threaten others to kill me, then I'll make sure that I take each and every one of you with me. All the witches who were alive were shivering thinking about the events that had just transpired. After saying that, Deina started to walk towards the exit. As she was walking, they managed to notice one thing, that is, Deina was unscathed. Not a single one of their spells had hit her. They were all shocked to see this. Soon Deina exited the cemetery, and all the witches present there knew that they could do nothing to get her back here. They all regretted deeply for not killing her last year itself. Agnes, who regained her consciousness, stood up and said to the remaining witches, we can forget about sacrificing her, but she has to be killed sooner or later. But for now we need to complete the harvest ritual. Prepare 4 new young witches. We'll start and end the ritual today itself. No more delaying. Bring them, now. In the Michelsons' compound all the vampires were having fun. Most of them were drinking blood, while the Michelsons were talking with Max in the first floor in their room. As their chat was continuing, Deina walked into their room. Watching Deina come in, Max said to others, looks like my job is done. And poof, he turned to smoke. Watching this, Elijah turned to Deina and asked, so I'm guessing everything went well. Deina smiled at them and made a hand sign, and poof turned back to Max. He said, now this feels much better. After that he looked at everyone and said, well, 30 of them died. For the rest of them, let's just say that they won't be planning to search for Deina anymore. Klaus laughed and said, ha ha ha. I wish I could see their bloody faces now. Haley, who was sitting with Elijah, looked confused, and Rebecca, who was dealing her wine, suddenly asked, hey, what's going on? Max was here and he's gone now, and this Deina turned to Max. So who are you, Max or Deina? Klaus said at this time, little sister. The kid made a clone and left it with us and turned himself as Deina and went with the witches. After that I guess he scared the shit out of them. And also came in and sat where Max's clone dissipated. He said, this had to be done. Now they think that Deina will slaughter them if they try to search for her. So we won't have to worry about them kidnapping you guys for the time being. Haley asked him, what do you mean for the time being? Max looked at them and said, sooner or later they will come for your child. So it's best to keep the baby away from New Orleans as far as possible. Haley asked, why? Max said, let's just say that there is a prophecy that is really bad to the witches. Klaus at this time said to Haley, that's why I've come up with a plan, love. After the child is born, you and Rebecca take it to Max's town. There, vampires can't enter and witches will be too weak to do anything. And nobody will be able to track you guys there. Rebecca frowned and said, if no vampires are able to enter, how will I be able to start with the baby? Klaus took out a few papers and said, this is a spell I found in Mother's book. It can help you jump bodies. You'll pick a witch and switch into her body. Max, hearing this, frowned. Watching this, Elijah said, Mr. Argent, you should know. If it's good for you, do anything you want. Max eased up and said, I'm not frowning about that. I think we need a witch to do the spell. For that, the only witch I trust is Deina. For that we need to go near the border of the town. But we can't go there before the child is born, and here I promise that I'm be back home by tomorrow. If I go late, Selena will not let me sleep in the bed. Ah, hate the damn couch. Max was moping while saying this. Hearing this, Rebecca laughed. And here I was thinking that you're some fearsome man. Marcel said, Rebecca, he's a kid, you should know. Unlike us who look younger than we are, he's only 17 or 18. Rebecca snorted, well, he looks older than that. Klaus said, enough of your jokes. How long do you think till the baby is born? Haley said, I think at least a week. The doctor said, she'll be born by the end of the week. Max thought for some time and said, why don't we just move to my town right now? She can have her birth there. It'll be safe there without the witches. And you don't have to worry in being attacked there. Elijah stood up and said, I agree with this. You guys leave in the morning. At this time Thierry came in running and said, guys, the witches. They did it again. They sacrificed another 4 young witches and finished their harvest ritual. What? Marcel and Max stood up and shouted together. Chapter 64 Witch Hunt. What? Thierry said, yeah, I heard from one of the witches I know of. Marcel frowned hearing this. Thierry said, don't worry. We can trust her. She's also one of the witches who doesn't like this harvest ritual. Now she's telling us to keep Deina away from here because the other witches are planning to retaliate as soon as the ancestors' magic returns. Marcel was about to say something, but Max interrupted him and said, I don't think we have much time before the harvest witches come back. I'll take Haley to my home right now. Rebecca can come by later. Marcel asked at this time, what do you mean, harvest witches come back? Max said, exactly what it means. That ceremony always works. And the dead young witches will come back. Marcel then asked, if they were gonna come back alive again, why did I have to stop the ritual in the first place? Max knew Marcel was having doubts. You did a good job, Marcel. If they die and come back, they won't be the same. They'll be more powerful, and the ancestors will tune them with their instructions. That'll be bad news for everyone. Because the witch ancestors have never liked anyone other than witches. And they definitely won't like a baby which is a part witch, part werewolf, part vampire, because it'll be the most powerful being in existence in the future. You see what I'm getting at? Elijah hearing this asked, so their target will be the baby. Max, you take them now and start driving. Max shook his head and said, it'll take a long time if we drive. I have a better way. After saying that he sat still and closed his eyes. Soon a greenish hue spread across his body. Everyone was shocked watching this. Marcel didn't have much reaction compared to others. Max looked at them and said, don't worry guys. This is one of the techniques that I've been working on. Haley, take my hand. After some hesitation Haley took his hand. Max closed his eyes and located Selena and teleported from the Michaelsons' mansion. In Max's house Selena was sleeping peacefully, but soon her sleep was disturbed when Max teleported there with Haley. Selena woke up and saw Max and Haley there. So she shouted, the hell, Max. I thought you'll be coming at evening. Max smiled at her and said, I'll be going back. She'll explain everything. As he pointed to Haley and teleported back, Selena saw that she was the pregnant and led her to another room and asked her, so you're the one that the witches kidnapped, huh? Haley replied back, yeah. I guess you're his girlfriend. Selena's eyes glowed red as she said, I didn't expect you to be a werewolf. Haley wasn't surprised because she had already heard that Max's girlfriend was an alpha, so she said, Max had already told me that you're an alpha. But your eyes doesn't seem to have that killing intent. Selena got curious and asked, what do you mean? Haley said, every new alpha that gets his power from killing another one, will have a killing intent on his eye, but you don't. Seems to be a special case. No wonder Max is so worried about you. Selena asked one after another question which bothered her through the years about werewolves. And Haley answered them peacefully. They continued talking without watching the time. Max teleported back to the Michaelsons' mansion and told them. I left her with my girlfriend. She's a werewolf alpha so she'll take good care of Haley. Klaus and Elijah sighed in relief. Rebecca then asked, so when am I going there? Klaus looked at her and said, first we take care of these witches. We need to destroy those young dead witches' bodies so they won't be able to come back. Marcel said with an impatient look, then what are we waiting for? Let's go. Elijah thought of something and said, if we do this then we need to do it quietly and quickly. We shouldn't let the world know that the Michaelsons planned this or any vampire for that matter. Max looked at them and said, I think I should do this alone. I've been trained in the art of assassination. So my stealth skills are impeccable. Klaus smiled at Max and said, did you really think that we've been doing nothing in the last 1,000 years? When it comes to stealth no one can beat the king of knights the vampires, Little Argent. Elijah joined with him and said, we'll teach you a trick or two tonight. Just watch us. Max snorted and said, well, Either way, I'm the only one who can pulverize their entire body. So if you find them, let me know immediately. I'll teleport to your spot. At this time, Rebecca said, My dear dumb brothers, you seem to forget something. Both Elijah and Klaus looked at Get confusedly. So Rebecca continued, How can we get inside the cemetery? Only Max can walk through them without any problem. Klaus facepalms himself and said, I think you're doing this alone, little Argent. Max smiled at them and said, Seems like it. So see ya guys in a bit. And teleported from there. After looking through the cemetery for half an hour, Max couldn't find the bodies of the dead young witches. So Max came up with an idea to catch a witch and read her mind to find their location. Max searched for a while and found a witch and teleported to the Mikhailsons' mansion with her. There Max placed his hand on top of the witch's head and started to read her memory. After a few minutes he found the memory he was looking for, but was still disappointed. Max turned to everyone and said, Guys, bad news. None of the witches here knows where the bodies are buried. Agnes took them and buried them somewhere. Marcel then said, Sense her location and teleport there. You can do that, can't you? Max shook his head and said, I was once attacked in my town by my cousin Jaime. And no matter how I tried, I couldn't find his location in the beginning. I was pretty confused how he was able to do that at that time. Now I know it. It's these damn witches. Just like that, Agnes used a similar but stronger spell. So even if I try to sense her with my strongest power, I still won't be able to find her. Klaus shouted hearing this, So what are you going to do? Are we going to let them come back? Max sighed and said, I don't think we can do anything about that, but I can sense the harvest witches if they come back to life. If what I know is true, then when they come back they'll emit strong amount of magic as a sign of their rebirth. At that time I'll teleport everyone there. So you guys prepare some long-range weapons. Why long-range weapons? I rather like to rip their hearts out. Rebecca asked with some confusion. Max looked at her and said, When a strong witch emits pressure on you, the closer you are to her the stronger pressure you'll feel. So long-range weapons. You guys prepare yourself. I'll keep on trying to sense their location. After saying that, Max sat in a corner and entered sage mode and started to search them. The Michaelsons decided to get themselves some weapons. Rebecca took the witch and tied up in her room and decided to use this witch's body for the body jumping spell. Later. After that she also went to look for her old gun. Chapter 65 Witch Hunt 2 In the morning around 8 o'clock in Mikhailson's mansion, Max, who was meditating in sage mode, suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, Guys, we're leaving. Now. As soon as he said this, Elijah, Rebecca and Klaus were surprised, but they still gathered together and held on to Max, and Max instantly teleported with them. All of them felt their soundings change, and even before they knew it they were in the bayou. There they saw Scarface Agnes standing with her eyes closed in the middle of 4 young witches who seemed to be unconscious. Max, who saw this, felt that it was familiar, and before he could think of anything, Agnes opened her eyes, which seemed to be radiating whitish light, as she said, We were waiting for you, original vampires, and you too, young hunter. Max who felt her magic was instantly shocked. Because he felt her channeling magic from all 4 of the young harvest witches and used them as an anchor to draw more magic from somewhere. Rebecca saw that Agnes was talking and charged forward with vamp speed to kill her instantly. Max shouted to her, Get back. But before anyone could react, Agnes chanted a spell instantly that slammed them all away. Max, who was in sage mode, was also blasted away from there. Max soon got up. He felt his whole body aching. But because of the sage mode he healed up pretty quickly and started shooting key balls at her. But to his surprise she just cast a shield spell which protected her and the young witches around her. So Max then made few shadow clones and all of them made a Rasengan and attacked her shield with different angles. Because of his constant assault the barrier started to crack. Agnes saw this and just flipped her hand and sent Max flying away. Klaus, who saw the damaged barrier, took his spear and threw it at Agnes with all his might. Agnes, who saw watching this, simply raised her hand and the spear that pierced her barrier just stopped straight in front of her and her shield also formed anew around her. Rebecca, who got up, took out an old pirate gun and bit her arm and poured the blood on the gun. After that she also shot at Agnes. This time Agnes wasn't able to react to it as the bloody bullet went directly to her heart and she fell down, but her body was still twitching. Max, who flew back, saw this scene and was surprised. He asked them, Where did you get those weapons, guys? Elijah slowly walked towards Agnes with a sword in his hand while saying, In the 15th century there was a group of hunters who only specialized in hunting witches. Well, the witches troubled us more than them, so we took it from them. Rebecca, who was reloading her gun, said, well, they could have kept it, but they thought that their weapons could kill us and tried to kill Klaus. Well, you know him, he got pissed off and slaughtered their entire family and took their weapons. Elijah stood in front of Agnes and continued, after that, we took a weapon of our choice. It's partially resistant to magic. So it's quite handy when dealing with a witch. After finishing their small tale, Elijah was about cut off Agnes's head, but she suddenly opened her eyes and let out a roar as her magic repelled everyone tens of meters away. What everyone saw next surprised them as the bullet that was in Agnes's heart came out and the wound healed itself. Rebecca, who saw this, shouted from the place where she was lying, impossible. Agnes, who got up, said in a blank tone, how dare you bring those accursed weapons in our presence? Nobody replied to her as they were too shocked to see a witch heal herself. As they had gotten hit pretty badly, both Elijah and Rebecca were having a hard time getting up, but Klaus seemed okay. As he soon stood up, Max came to him and whispered something. Klaus and his siblings heard this with their sharp hearing and they all nodded. After that, Klaus looked at Agnes and said, no matter how many times you hit us like this, you can't kill us. Sooner or later you'll run out of magic, then I'll rip your heart out right in front of you. Agnes didn't have any emotion in her face as she replied, we don't need to kill you. We'll just channel your power just like these young ones. With your power combined with ours, we'll be able to purge all that stands in our way, as it'll temporarily serve us till we get back our true strength. Max, who was standing behind Klaus all this time, was secretly charging his Kamehameha and he shouted, get down. Klaus immediately ducked as a huge energy wave was sent above him towards Agnes. Agnes, who saw this, felt that her barrier won't be able to hold, so she channeled her magic and chanted a new spell. As the Kamehameha wave hit in front of her, her new spell formed a mirror which absorbed all of the Kamehameha energy. Max was shocked seeing this. He couldn't believe that his most powerful move was easily absorbed, but what next happened surprised him even more. As the mirror that absorbed his energy wave started to vibrate and sent that Kamehameha back at Max and Klaus. Max, who saw this, immediately reached out to Klaus and teleported from there to the side where Rebecca and Elijah were laying. Elijah saw Max, who got teleported near him, and said, Max, this is an ancient spell. So from now on don't use your energy attacks, it's useless. Max, who heard this, knew that there was nothing like this in the TV series, asked him, how did Agnes get this good with spells? Last night I slashed her face and she couldn't even resist my speed. But now her spells are keeping up with my speed. Klaus, who was with them, said, because I don't think we're fighting Agnes at all, at least not the same one. Look at her eyes. No normal witch's eyes radiate magic like that. Max, hearing this, asked Agnes, who was standing there, who are you, witch? Agnes, who heard this, looked towards them with her expressionless scarface and said, we are who we are. You name us as we are. We are the witch that brought name to the witches. Mac and others who heard this were even more confused. Klaus couldn't take it anymore as he said, is your brain fried, witch? Looking at their confused expression, she said, you don't know us, but yet you call us by name. You amuse us, blood bastard. Even though she said that she was amused, there was no change in her monotonous voice. Even though there was no emotion in that voice, but for Klaus that was the last straw as his eyes turned yellow and he charged at her, you'll pay for that, bitch. And punched straight at the barrier. Chapter 66, End of Witch Hunt. When Klaus punched at the barrier, nothing happened. With his anger clouding his mind, he kept on punching, but after a few seconds of watching this, Agnes reached and plucked his heart out. Klaus fell there lifelessly, but Agnes moved and placed Klaus in between the young witches and planned to channel his power. Everyone knew that Klaus will be fine if he was taken out of there after a few minutes. So Max decided to plan something and asked Elijah, Elijah, is there a weakness for that spell? Elijah shook his head and said, if we attack physically, the barrier will block it. If you use energy attack, that mirror spell will send it back. Teleport everyone back to the house, we can't let her channel us. Max heard and thought of something. He charged his entire body with ki and went at her, punching the barrier, but this time the barrier didn't hold up. As Max's fist was about to hit her, she stared at him and Max's momentum came to an abrupt halt. Then she chanted a spell and sent Max back flying. Max, who was thrown away, felt his internal organs bleeding, but his sage mode lasted a few minutes, which healed him and used up the last of sage mode chakra. Max then made a shadow clone and the clone teleported itself away from there. Max then came beside Elijah and Rebecca, who got up and said, "Guys, she's not as strong as she looks, only the magic is strong. All we have to do is sever the link between her physical self and the other side." Rebecca knew what Max was implying, so she said, "But to sever the link we have to kill the girls, and as far as I know they are all being protected by that barrier and her mirror spell." Max nodded and said, "I know. So when I drag her away from there, I need you guys to kill all 4 girls, not even one of them should live." Rebecca asked, "How are you going to do that? And I know that you're stronger when you're all green, but now you're back to normal." Max just said, "I'll do it somehow. But be ready to take action." Both of them knew that Max had a plan, so decided to trust him. Max saw Klaus's sphere lying on side, so he took it and told them, "On my mark, you kill them and drag Klaus out of there." They nodded. Max then felt his shadow clone undid itself and felt himself filled with nature energy collected by his shadow clone. Elijah and Rebecca were surprised that Max instantly turned green. But they knew that Max is back to his peak. But Max didn't attack Agnes. This confused both of them. And before Elijah could ask Max what's going on, he heard Max say, "Kaioken by 3 inches" as soon as Max said that he channeled his ki and chakra according to Kaioken method. Elijah, Rebecca and even Agnes saw Max's energy go crazy around him. Max, who was emitting red ki all around him, channeled both his ki and chakra into the sphere in hand. The sphere started to vibrate and gave off a purple hue. Max shouted at Elijah, "Now!" and threw the sphere at Agnes and flew towards her. As the sphere is magic resistant and combined with Max's ki and with the force Max threw, it instantly shattered the mirror spell and barrier spell and dug though her heart dragging get backwards. Max, who followed close by, brought his energy to the utmost as he dragged Agnes nearly 20 meters away from the place where she was channeling her magic. Elijah and Rebecca, who saw that the barrier was down, instantly went to place where the 4 witches were lying. Elijah cut off 2 of witches' heads while Rebecca ripped another 2's heart. After that they both dragged Klaus away from there. And just as soon as possible was taken out of the spell circle, he woke up. Max, who was holding Agnes, didn't know why she didn't retaliate with some spells. So he looked up to see her expressionless face. She looked at Max and said, "Young hunter, you have thwarted our ploy. But know this, we will soon return. When we return, we will come with all our might, as today's was only a 10th of our true strength." Max knew that this was a different person than the Agnes who he met last night. So Max decided to clear his doubt. "Who are you?" Agnes, who was losing power, slowly said, "We are the first of our kind. We are what brought our kind our name. We are the first to use magic thought out time. We are witches shall all of has always been called." Max was shocked to hear this. He didn't expect that this was a soul of the original with. And from what he heard, this was only a 10th of her power, which he was unable to fight it. He shivered at the thought of fighting this witch in her full power. He wanted to know more about her, but before he could ask, she said, "The one born of Argent. Your bloodline says your name. When I return, your bloodline shall end." After that, all the light vanished from her eyes. Max knew that she was dead, so he charged at Key Ball and destroyed her entire body. He turned to the Michelsons and said, "Guys, I think we fucked up." All 3 siblings has heard the conversation between Max and the witch, so they knew that trouble was coming in the future. Elijah said, "When it comes, it comes. We'll handle it together." Max thought about it and said, "We need to get stronger." Rebecca said, "We could give you our mother's grimoire. You can learn strong spells from there. But you need to return that soon." Klaus also agreed to this. "We vampire are the strongest of our species. We don't have much room to grow stronger. But you can. I know that which will come for all of us. The more stronger we are, the better our chances will be." Max thought about it and he also agreed. He knows that he had magic energy in his body because he made the wish to God asking for energy manipulation, giving him almost all kinds of energy within his body. He looked at them and said, "Guys, thank you. I'll definitely repay you for this." Elijah took his chance and said, "We already owed you once. So this makes us even. So don't worry." Klaus stretched out his hand and said, "From today we are no longer allies, we are friends. We invite you in our bond of always and forever. Are you willing to be a part of this, Max Argent?" Max knew what this meant. This is the trust that Klaus, who suspects everyone else, placed on himself. He knew was the second person to receive this, as the first one was Marcel Gerard. Max extended his hand and shook it with Klaus and said, always and forever, huh. It's better to have more friends than enemies. Thank you. Chapter 67 Plans for the future. Max, who was sitting in the Michelsons' compound, was still pondering over what had happened. Rebecca during this time had switched bodies with the witch Max had kidnapped earlier. And now she was sitting beside Marcel with Max. She asked him, are you still worried that she'll come back for revenge? Max nodded and said, I'm not actually worried for myself. I'm just worried for my family. You know, I can just teleport and run away if the fight gets tough, and I don't know how long that barrier around my town will hold against that witch. Marcel, who just had a drink, said, kid, for now relax. You beat her this time, right? You'll be able to do it again. At this time Klaus zoomed in and said, Marcel, we barely won this time. We just removed her link to his world. And when we fought her we barely made a scratch to her. And to top it all off, it was just 1/10 of her power. Marcel asked in confusion, I didn't know Agnes was that powerful. Max replied to him, it was not Agnes. I think it's the spirit of the first witch. You know, the original witch, that used the magic for the first time in history. Max then turned to the door and asked, did you find it, Elijah? Elijah just walked inside with an old book and threw it to Max and said, this is our mother's grimoire. All that is known to her in magic is well documented here. You learn from it and return it. Max, who held the book, asked him, was your mother as powerful as her? Hearing this, everyone put their heads down. They knew what Max was implying. Max then asked, guys, in a few months I'll go to a place to get stronger. You won't be able to find me till I come back. Then he turned to Rebecca and said, Rebecca, you'll be staying in my town. I only ask you to take care of my people. So I think you'll need this more than I do. Then he passed the book to Rebecca. Klaus, hearing this, asked Max, so where is this place that you're going to get stronger? Max turned to him and said, to tell the truth, even I don't know. It's a place similar to Limbo, like in another dimension. So I don't exactly know it. After pausing for a few seconds, he looked at Klaus and said in a serious tone, Klaus, I think you could get stronger than you are now. Hearing this, the entire room fell silent and Klaus agitatedly asked, don't joke, Max. I'm at the peak of my power now. And I'm stuck. I can't grow any further. Max then said, this is where you are wrong. You're a beta in your werewolf side, right? What do you think happens when a beat kills an werewolf alpha? Klaus simply said, yeah, even I thought the same and killed a lot of alphas, but nothing happened. Max smiled and said, do you remember how your werewolf side was suppressed for a long time? Klaus nodded. So Max continued, if we're to suppress your vampire side and let your werewolf side become the dominant one, and then if you kill an alpha werewolf, you'll be easily able to become an alpha. After that we can let go of the suppression. Don't you think that this is a feasible option? Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Marcel got scared thinking about an even more powerful Klaus. But to Klaus this information was like a scripture from heaven, as he stated laughing madly, ha 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 ha. Max Argent, if we're together we'll be able to dominate this entire world. What do you say? Max smiled at him and said, I just want to live my life. You can have the world for yourself. Before I come back, try to get this done. But please don't hunt any alphas in Beacon Hills. My friends and girlfriend are alphas. So you know. Elijah at this time said, I promise you, Max, that I'll make sure that no harm befalls them or your family when you're not here. Max was relieved hearing Elijah's promise, because he knew that Elijah will always try to keep his promise. He looked at everyone and said, guys, I think it's about time I leave here. I'll be teleporting Rebecca with me. I'll let you guys know when the child is born. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Max looked at Klaus and said, Klaus, you have a lot of enemies. Those who can't take revenge on you might target your daughter. So I think you should know what to do. Klaus pondered for a few seconds and said, I think, by the time you come back I'll be rid of all my enemies. And your town is a vampire-free zone, so I don't have to worry much. Max nodded and went to Rebecca's side and held her hand and disappeared. It was already evening when Max returned, so Selena was inside working on her computer. At this time Max suddenly popped up in the side and said, hi. Selena wasn't surprised this time. She, without even looking at him, said, looks like you're on time. Who's the guest? Max simply said, it's Rebecca. She's a guest. She'll be here to take care of Haley's baby, and she's a witch, so she'll be able to protect everyone when I'm out of town. This time Selena turned to him and asked, so you're going to leave again? This time Max said with a serious expression, well, we have big trouble coming our way, and I'm not strong enough to deal with it. So this is a kind of a training journey. Selene squinted her eyes and said, then I'm coming too. Max shook his head and said, no, it could be dangerous, and I want you to protect Mom and Dad. I can't trust them with anyone else. If you're here then I know they'll be safe. Selene pouted and mumbled, well, you always have these weird reasons. But next time you're going on a tour I'm joining in. Max's eyes were twitching as he said, it's not a tour, it's a training journey. Cough at this moment Rebecca coughed and said, well, can you lovebirds continue your chat after showing me where I'm staying? Max looked at her and said, downstairs. There's a room beside the kitchen, you can take that. Oh, Haley and Deina are here. So go on. Rebecca snorted and walked away grumbling about Max not being a gentleman or something. Chapter 68 Leaving after 4 days of coming to Beacon Hills Haley went into labor giving birth to a beautiful baby girl. When Max had informed about that to Klaus he came charging in without even minding about the barrier that keeps vampires away from the town. Which nearly scared everyone, but when Elijah tried to enter the town he couldn't even move an inch. Max concluded that it might be because Klaus was a hybrid. Klaus's usual named the child as Hope. Max wasn't surprised by this, but what surprised Max was the different types of energies inside Hope when he sensed her. He didn't tell anyone about that as he decided to research about it later. As few weeks went by everyone was surprised by Hope's growth. She was growing up faster than an average baby. Klaus was scared as he came back running to Beacon Hills. Max who saw this thought about the child which was born in Twilight who was half human half vampire. So he told Klaus that his daughter will be a grown-up in a couple years and stop aging after that. Klaus hearing this was happy that she'll be alright but at the same time sad hearing that his baby daughter will be a grown-up soon. Max was still confused by this turn of events. He didn't expect that Hope's growth will not be according to the plot. But he didn't worry about it, as he didn't see it as much of a problem. Klaus decided to stay in Beacon Hills, but every 15 days he goes out to hunt his old enemies. As the days went by Chris once saw Klaus and immediately pulled a gun to take him down, but Max stopped him and explained the situation. Chris who heard Max's explanation was slightly relaxed but he was still wary around Klaus. Max later decided that he needs to gather energies to travel between dimensions, but he didn't know how, so he did the only thing he knows of. He practiced Sage Mode every day sitting on the stump of Neemton. As the days went by, Max caught a fly coming out of the Neemton. Max knew that it was related to the Najutsun, so Max caught it in a test tube and kept it with him. He was very curious about the powers of Najutsun. He decided that he'll let some unfortunate person get possessed by it and study it in detail. As the time went by, one day Max felt that he was full of energy. Even though he went out of Sage Mode, he still felt he was full. That's when he knew that he had stored a large amount of dimensional energy. He went up his home and bid farewell to everyone. And he advised his friends to keep a vial of vampire blood with them whenever there's trouble around. After that he flew to where the Neemton is and started to think. Because he didn't know how to use the dimensional energy and travel to another dimension. So he did the one thing he knew. He channeled all his energy and started to roar as he emitted all the energy out towards the sky. As his energies went straight up, a weird kind of portal formed showing a black void. Max who saw this immediately flew inside, and as soon as he went in the portal closed. Inside the void Max who was inside the void saw the portal close behind him and sighed and said, phew, that was tiring. And it took me all of my energy. At this time another voice said, yeah, you wasted so much dimensional energy there. Some people might cry if they heard this. Max who heard this saw an old man slowly appearing in front of him. Because Max knew this old man, as he's the god that sent Max here to the Teen Wolf world. Max smiled at him and said, so you can come here directly, huh? I thought you'd try to kill me with thunder like last time to meet me. The old man said, well, at that time it was necessary. But here is the void. I can travel here freely. So I guess you're ready to go to another world, huh? Max nodded hearing this and asked the question which was bothering him, why is the world so different there? I mean, Original Witch and Klaus's child growing up fast in the Michelson's using ancient weapons. What's all this? The old man smiled at Max and said, just because you're in that world, doesn't mean that everything is saw in some TV will be here exactly like that. There are lots of changes. You are also an existent that wasn't supposed to be there, right? So you don't get to complain about some changes here and there. Max couldn't complain hearing this, so he asked the question which was bothering him from a long time. You told me there was a secret within my wishes, could you tell me about it now? The old man smirked and said, do you really want to know? Max nodded his head quickly, so the old man said, well, one of your wish was to learn all the techniques Goku and Naruto knows, right? Max said, yeah, and I can remember all their techniques, but I do have to practice a lot to get used it too. The old man shook his head and said, that's where you're wrong. You don't know all the techniques Naruto knows. Max thought about it for a while and said, no, I think I remember all the techniques. The old man said, well, when Naruto was the Hokage, he went through the Forbidden Scroll and lot of other scrolls which noted a myriad of techniques, so even though he didn't practice it, he has learned about it through and through. Now tell me, do you really know all his techniques? Max was dumbfounded hearing this. He didn't expect this kind of situation, but at the same time he was confused as to why he didn't remember it, so he asked the old man, then why don't I know anything about that? Come to think of it, I don't remember many techniques he could have learned from the Forbidden Scroll. The old man smiled at him and said, well, it's because I sealed that part of your memory. It was a test to see if you're worthy. Max was confused and asked, what kind of test and worthy of what? The old man said, you know, some people are good and some are bad, but we find these people everywhere. I wanted to see if you're good and bad or neither good nor bad. Now that I know what kind of person you are, I think it's about time I unseal that memory. After saying that, the old man placed his hand on top of Max's head as a bright light started to glow all around. After a few minutes Max opened his eyes only to find himself alone in the void. Chapter 69 A new journey. As he moved forward following the trail of strong magic in the void, he noticed a portal opened slightly further ahead. Through that portal he was sensing strong magic. So without hesitating he flew towards it. As he got closer he was feeling that the energies in his body was getting lower and lower, but he pushed through with all he's got and went into the portal and lost conscious. When Max woke up he felt a headache like he's never felt before. He sat up and noticed there are lots of bed to his left similar to his. Then he saw an old man with a beard arguing with a middle-aged man. Old man seemed to be furious as he said, how can you allow dementors to run rampant everywhere? Middle-aged man said in an indignant voice, I wasn't expecting a kid to end up there, Albus. You should know that I want at fault here. Then he stopped halfway and turned towards Max and said to Albus, look, the boy's all right. Now you don't have to scream at me. Albus had already noticed that Max woke up, so he said, I know that, but those dementors running around school grounds is uncalled for. What if other students were to be attacked by them just like him? That middle-aged man said, well, talk about this later. First, find out who he is and how he fell from that weird portal. Max, who had listened to their conversation, had an idea of which world this is, but still he asked them, excuse me. Can you tell me where I am? Albus came in front of him with a smile on his face. Said, well, young man, you are currently in the greatest school of witchcraft and wizardry. Now how about you tell me your name? Max looked at him and felt that something was invading his consciousness, so he flared a little bit of his ki throughout his body and said to him, I wouldn't mind saying my name, but can you stop trying to snoop around in my head? It's really irritating. Albus was surprised that the kid, who seemed to be around 18, was able to resist his legilimens. He got serious and said, okay. I seem to notice that you already know me. Care to tell me how you know me? Max smirked and said, who wouldn't know the greatest light wizard of this era? My respects to you, Mr. Albus Dumbledore. And the name is Max. The middle-aged man beside Albus said at this time, so who are you and how did you come out of that portal? Max noticed that the middle-aged man was Cornelius Fudge, so he frowned and ignored him. He looked at Dumbledore and said, I think it'd be better if we discuss in private. I don't want anyone else to know this. Albus noticed that Max didn't seem to like Fudge, so he turned to Fudge and said, I think we have come to an end of today's discussion, Cornelius Fudge. It better if you leave now. Fudge turned angry because of this and shouted, "You're telling me to get out just because of a kid whom you don't even know said so." Albus glared at him with a stern face and said, "This happened in my school grounds, so I'm responsible for this. You have no right to order me around in my school. Now if you say please be on your way." Fudge went silent and glared at the smirking Max and left. Albus turned to Max and said, "I think we should go to my office. There we can talk privately." Max nodded and walked out with Albus. As he was walking, he was surprised at how big Hogwarts was. He might have seen it in TV before, but watching it in real life was way more different. But he didn't show it on his face, he just kept his calm face up front. Soon they reached Albus' office and went in. Albus went forward and poured some tea for himself as asked Max, "Would you like to have some tea?" Max just replied, "No thanks. I think we should get right to the point as of who I am." Albus nodded and asked, "So would you mind telling me who you are? I notice that you have strong magic within you, so I know you're not a muggle. But I don't see a wand with you nor have I heard of a wizard like you." Max simply flew up to where Fox was sitting and petted its head. Then he turned to Dumbledore and said, "Actually, I'm Max Argent from the 21st century. As for why I'm here, it's because of a fight with family and I was banished here." Dumbledore was surprised to see Max flying without using wand or a spell. He looked at Max and said, "You quite surprise me there, young Argent. But don't you think it's quite far-fetched about you coming from future?" Max landed in the ground and said, "I know it is, but it is what it is. I can't allow future knowledge to be known to others, but I could tell you something which you could be interested." Dumbledore noticed that Max was serious, so he took out his wand and chanted a sealing spell to seal up the entire room. He looked at Max and asked, "Okay, now we can be sure that nobody can listen into our conversation here." Max looked at him and asked, "What year is it?" Dumbledore didn't mind this, as he said, "It's 1993. Max nodded and continued, "Okay, so now Sirius Black just escaped, so Voldemort will be coming back in 2 years. Dumbledore was shocked to hear this. All this time he was expecting that the Dark Lord might return sooner or later, but he didn't know exactly when. So when he heard Max say that Voldemort will return in 2 years, he was shocked, as the time seemed to be a bit too early. He was sure that Harry won't ready to take on Voldemort in just 2 years, even if he trained Harry himself. After thinking for a while, he looked at Max and said, "This is serious stuff, young man. Are you certain of it?" Max nodded and said, "It's written in our history books. And I'm quite well versed in history, so I used to read it all the time." Dumbledore nodded and asked, "So nobody can know about this except is, huh?" Max looked at him and said, "To maintain the history, nobody can know about this. As you say, it's for the greater good." Dumbledore found out that the young man from the future seems to know about his character, so he also didn't behave in his grandfatherly attitude. He looked at Max and directly said, "Okay. I understand. I'll just cut to the chase. In this time you have nowhere to go and the magic ministry is looking for the cause of the portal and you're the only one related to that. And from the information I got, I don't think I have much time, so I need someone to train a student of mine. How about you stay in school and be an assistant to one of my teachers and train him while I'll cover for you in the ministry?" Max smiled at him and said, "It's a good proposal, but I need access to all the magic books." Dumbledore nodded and said, "All teachers have access to library and also the dark section." Max simply stared at him and asked, "I'm not talking about that. I want your views on magic. You became the greatest light wizard in this era, and I'm sure you have some journal or something which you noted down your research in magic." Dumbledore started back at Max as he stared at him. They stayed like that for few seconds, then Dumbledore said, "Very well. But I'm curious, why would you, a guy from the future, look for old ways of magic?" Max smiled and said, "You want me to stay here so that I can teach some future magic to Harry Potter. Just like that, I'm also looking for ancient ways of magic. It's nature, isn't it? Old looking for new and new looking for old." Dumbledore smiled as he waved his wand to bring a dusted book that seemed to be older than a free decades. "This is my journal. I have noted down all my discoveries as a wizard. But I want you to return this book before the school starts." Max nodded and asked, "How long do I have till the school starts?" Dumbledore smiled and said, "A month. On September 1st the school starts and the students will be here." So you better make use of the time you have with my book. Chapter 70 Magic Discussion. Max, who got the Dumbledore's journal, didn't directly went to study it. He went to the library and looked for a few curses which he wanted to study. It took him an hour to learn Gemino curse, as he used 50 shadow clones to train in it at the same time. Dumbledore, who saw how Max learned a spell using clones, knew that he had made the right decision to let Max stay in school. Watching for some time, he also decided to go to Ministry and settle some things about the Dementors. Max, after learning Gemino curse, he used it on the book multiple times and made a total of 50 copies and used 50 shadow clones to practice it. Max wanted to memorize the entire content of the book, so he used 50 clones that read the entire book at the same time. He finished reading it after a week. But he still repeated this once more as we wasn't sure if Dumbledore would give him the book again. In these 2 weeks, he didn't meet anyone else except for Dumbledore and the house elf that brought him food. He kept his exercise to a minimum in these 2 weeks, but that minimum was literal hell for ordinary people. After 2 weeks of studying the whole book, Max went to Dumbledore to return it and ask some of his doubts. On the way to Dumbledore's office, he met Minerva McGonagall brining in some kind of envelope to Dumbledore's office. Minerva saw Max coming there, so she looked at him and said, "You must be the new assistant professor for Dada. Pleased to meet you, Professor Argent. I'm Minerva McGonagall, head of the Gryffindor House and Transfiguration professor as well as deputy headmistress." Max was feeling pretty weird being called professor. He looked at her with a smile and said, "Please, Professor McGonagall, you can call me Max. It feels weird being called professor by someone older than me." Minerva gave him a sharp look and asked, "Are you implying that I'm old, Professor Argent?" Max instantly shook his head and said, No, I didn't mean that. I was just." He was interrupted as Minerva said, "Well, it doesn't matter. You better get used to it, Professor Argent, because that's what all the students are gonna be calling you soon." Max was feeling that he might get a headache because of the students. He looked at her and said, "Well, thanks for the heads up. Looks like I need a lot of getting used to during this time." Soon they reached Dumbledore's office. Minerva gave the envelope to Dumbledore and said, "He's in trouble. I've arranged him to stay at Leaky Cauldron till the school starts just to be safe." Dumbledore looked at Max and seemed to have made a decision and told her, "Minerva, I think you should bring him here. Our new assistant professor better meet his student early on so that they could get a head start." Minerva was taken aback by this statement. She immediately said, "Don't you think you're placing a bit too much trust in our new colleague?" "No offense." Max shook his head and said, "None taken." Dumbledore shook his head and said, "Minerva, I suggest you trust my judgment. There is a reason for why I'm doing this. And as for you, Mr. Argent, I suggest you buy a wand. With it you'll be able to use your spells more efficiently." Max shook his head and said, "From your studies and from what I know, for me using a wand is troublesome. If I were to train spells for the first time without wand, it'll help me get good control over magic. As I use the spell over and over again, I'll be proficient with it." At this time Minerva said, "But don't you think it'll be easier with a wand?" Max looked at her and said, "Imagine a scenario where you're surrounded by dark wizards who are weaker than you, but your wand is broken. How do you think you will get out of that situation?" Dumbledore chuckled at this and said, "You are right indeed. Everybody has their own way of learning. I think we shouldn't impose on that, but I do hope that you teach Mr. Potter the normal way." Max nodded and said, "When the time comes he will be strong enough. So you don't have to worry about him." Then he returned Dumbledore's journal back to him. After taking the journal, Dumbledore asked him, "I assume you finished it. What's your opinion on that?" Max nodded and said, "It's actually intriguing theory. But if I were to look at it according to your theory, don't you think that we'll be able to do anything with magic? I mean, all we have to do is have enough magic within us and know how to use it. So it's not impossible to create new life, but if that was possible then there would be creatures made out of magic. There are examples for it from the ancient days like dragons, centaurs and other species. But why aren't anyone making species like that now?" Dumbledore nodded hearing this and said, "I would say that the magic we have is not enough. To create something we need a huge source of raw magic, but since the beginning of the 19th century, the magic on Earth is getting reduced slowly and slowly. So we're only able to use magic to do minor things. With enough magic we can do anything, but as I said, We all don't have enough magic. Probably Merlin had it during those days like many others, but now I don't think anyone in the young generation has it, except you. Max smiled at hearing this and asked, so to do something like healing someone's cut it or cutting someone, it takes the same amount of magic but different way of thought. Dumbledore kept his journal on the shelf and said, exactly. It's all based on how you will it to do. If you wish to create fire out of magic it'll take a small amount of magic, but if you were to use that fire to attack someone it'll take more magic. Their trick is knowing the right amount of magic. If you use excess magic you'll burn everyone, if you use it too less it'll be useless. Max finally understood the exact concept of magic, so he decided to ask the question which has been bothering him from some time. Now I only one question. Why do we use curses or charms? I mean I use wandless and chantless magic, but what's the use of spelling out a curse? Dumbledore answered to him, as you see we use wants to focus our magic, and we spell out curses because it's actually the ancient language not literal magic word. If we use a curse without knows its effect, it probably won't work. So if we know the effect of a curse then it'll work in a mild manner, but we use the ancient language to maximize the output of the curse. Max was immediately enlightened hearing this, so you mean to say, for example, like water in the elemental name aqua gives it higher changes of creating water. Dumbledore smiled at him and asked, from where you are from and the way you use magic, I thought you would know that. Max shook his head and said, a lot of records were lost in the war. I basically picture the output hole using the magic. Dumbledore was surprised to hear this. That's a interesting way to use magic. But I don't suppose everyone will be able to do it. Max shook his head. Even though he learned a lot from Dumbledore's journal, he had made a lot of theories by himself. He wasn't willing to share all of it with Dumbledore, because he knew Dumbledore wouldn't mind sacrificing him for the greater good. So he has to keep as much secrets to himself and only give a tiny amount out to gain some of Dumbledore's trust. Minerva, who was watching Max and Dumbledore's conversation about magic, was surprised. She didn't expect Max was this knowledgeable, but she didn't know that whatever Max knew was from Dumbledore's journal and some of his own theories. After this conversation, she started to see Max in a different light. She looked at them and said, so professors, I'll be bringing Harry tomorrow. I'm expecting some good things from our new assistant professor. After that she went out. Dumbledore looked at Max and asked, so I think you don't have any more doubts after this? Max nodded and said, well, I don't many for now. I'll check with you often if I have any more. And thanks for the journal, it was enlightening. I'll be in the library till that Potter comes. After that he also went out. Chapter 71 Meeting Harry Potter. After his talk with Dumbledore, Max directly went to the library and made 50 clones and started to study all the curses there, including dark magic. While he was studying dark magic he thought of Voldemort. If I were to only study dark magic then I'll go crazy like Voldemort, so straining light magic with dark magic will balance out both of it. While his clones were studying magic he was meditating and going through the new memories he unlocked. He noticed that there were innumerable jutsus, but he didn't mind it as he knew that a Hokage had access to all the justice in the nation. He decided to learn some key justice that he needed to get stronger. He also noticed a few sealing techniques. So he decided to learn Fuinjutsu first. He took a few blank papers to practice storage seal first, as he knew that he might use it pretty often. As he was practicing sealing, his clones started to practice one spell at a time. So one by one all the clones took a curse or charm and went out to practice in the Forbidden Forest. As his training went on he didn't notice the time, so after practicing a few sealing techniques he got up and saw that it was 3 o'clock in the morning. He went to his quarters and slept. In the morning he woke up pretty late, and he noticed that his food was already kept by his bed. He was pleased with how the house elf did their work diligently. He ate his food and decided that he better try out this new exercise method. He teleported outside Hogwarts and applied a few seals on himself and made 50 clones and started to run. This was his new seal, Gravity Seal, which he learned last night. He knew that he'll get all the fatigue from the clones with their experience, so he decided to use this method to train. After running around the castle for like 10 times he was drenched in sweat and undid the Shadow Clone Jutsu. As soon as the jutsu was undone he immediately fell down, but he actually had a smile on his face. He was very happy, because he knew that this way of training yielded good results. After that he sat down beside a tree and meditated to recuperate. After 15 minutes of resting, he went inside the castle to get some lunch. As he reached the dining hall, he saw Harry Potter and some of the teachers sitting in and having lunch. Dumbledore, who saw Max coming in, said with a smile, "Well, come on in, young Professor Argent. A seat is waiting for you here." Max just went and sat and said to Dumbledore, "Thanks. Please, it's Max." Minerva chuckled hearing this. She knew Max didn't like to be called Professor. Snape just ignored him and kept on glaring at Harry. Harry was curious to see a young man who kinda seemed like a senior student being called Professor. Dumbledore saw that Harry was confused, so he told him, "Harry, this is Professor Argent. He'll be an assistant to our new Dada teacher, and he'll also teach you spells personally when you're done with your everyday classes." Harry was surprised to hear that he'll be getting personally tutored by him, but his mood immediately fell, recalling his last 2 years of Dada classes. All he remembered was having fake teachers throughout first 2 years, so he also wasn't expecting much. Dumbledore looked at both Harry and Max, then said, "Professor Argent, how about you start teaching Harry from tomorrow? Today, just spend some time together and get to know each other." Max thought about it and nodded. Harry, hearing this, was happy. He already decided to test whether this young professor was real or fake like the rest. After finishing their lunch, everyone went to their business. Harry followed out Max. Max, who saw Harry following him, told him, "Hey, Harry, I'm Max. Max Argent. I heard you're quite a genius." Harry, hearing this, was kinda embarrassed. He looked at Max and directly asked, "Professor, can you really do some curses or charms? I mean, my last 2 Dada professors kinda weren't up to the task. And you seem kinda young." Max was surprised hearing Harry's question, but he understood, as he had watched in TV Harry's Dada professors were. As they both reached the Forbidden Forest, unknown to Harry, a couple of Dementors were moving towards their direction. Max, who noticed this, said to Harry, "Harry, you know that it's rude to ask your teacher whether he's qualified to teach or not. But I'll give you a demonstration." As he said this, he turned to Harry and pointed to his right and said, "Look there, Harry." Harry turned and looked at pointed direction and noticed 2 black creatures floating towards them. As they reached closer and closer, he was feeling cold and felt his conscience getting blurry and felt like he heard a woman talking. Max, who saw that Harry was getting affected by these Dementors, just used some key in his hand as slammed at Harry's back. Harry immediately came to conscience and asked, "What are they, Professor?" Max smiled at him and said, "I'll tell you about that later. Now watch carefully here, Harry." After saying that, he simply lifted his hand and said, "Expecto Patronum." A bright light came out of his hand, to which the Dementors seemed to be scared of as they flew away. Harry, who saw this, was instantly surprised and asked with anticipation, "Professor, what was that?" "That was amazing." Max smiled at him and said, "This is called Patronus Charm. I learned it last night, so I still haven't mastered it. But still, it's pretty handy when it comes to handling these bloody Dementors." Max paused and then continued, "So from tomorrow you'll be practicing this charm. You sneak around a lot, right? So this will be useful when you get caught by a Dementor." Harry was embarrassed when he heard that he was sneaking around. He looked at the young professor and said, "Professor, why are the Dementors placed near school?" Max looked at Harry and said, "Someone escaped from Azkaban. Minister suspects that he might break in here. So I think they'll be around here for some time." Harry was shocked. He looked at Max and Apprentice. "Professor, do you think they might really break in here?" Max ruffled Harry's head and said, "Don't worry. Even if anyone breaks in here, in Hogwarts we kinda have some of the best wizards." Harry thought any Dumbledore and sighed. But there was something bothering him for some time, so he decided to ask it, "Professor, why me? I mean, why did Headmaster suddenly arrange you to personally teach me?" Max, hearing this, sighed and said, "Harry, there are some things which you're not supposed to know. If you were strong enough, we don't mind telling you, but you're not ready yet. We all hope that you'll be ready when the time comes. I'm just here to teach you till then." Harry was confused hearing this. He knew there was something wrong. He also knew that everyone around him always keeps on hiding some secret. But all he can do now is wait. But he was still happy to get a good Dada teacher. He then asked, "Then Professor, can you teach me any practical charm, like some easy ones?" Max smiled at him and started to slowly float and flew up. Max then looked at Harry and asked, "You know the levitation charm, right?" Harry nodded. Then Max continued, well, have you ever tried applying it on yourself? Harry nodded and said, Professor, not only me, I heard that many people tried, but it took too much magic out of us, that's why nobody uses it like you. Max actually used key to fly, but he couldn't tell that to Harry, so he looked at him and said, okay, apply the spell only for your robes. Then try to move your robes with that, it'll automatically move your body. Hearing this, Harry was surprised. He started to use the levitation charm on his clothes. At first he wasn't able to move the right way. But after a couple of hours of practice he managed to move around slowly. Chapter 72 Teaching Harry. After practicing flying till evening, Harry was happy and excited for his future classes with this new professor. Max looked at Harry, who was flying beside him, and said in all serious tone, Harry, whatever I teach you in person secretly, you have to promise me that you'll not teach it to others as long as I'm here. Harry saw that Max was serious, knew that he won't be able to teach his two best friends, was sad, but he still promised. Okay, Professor. I won't teach it to anyone till you're here. As he wasn't concentrating where he was flying, Harry crashed into a tree. Watching your Max laughed so him. As Harry wasn't flying at high speed, he wasn't hurt much, so he got up and glared at Max and said, it's not funny, Professor. Max controlled his laughter and said, well, it is for me. If you want me to stop laughing, you better start focusing where you fly. Harry nodded and said, yes, Professor. After that, Harry and Max made their way to Hogwarts. Harry went to Gryffindor common room and Max went to meet Dumbledore. When Max entered the office, Dumbledore was sitting there seemingly waiting for Max. As soon as Max entered, Dumbledore asked him, an ingenious way to use the levitation charm for flying, but why am I not able to feel any magic when you're flying, Professor Argent? Max simply sat in front of him and said, well, magic isn't the only way to fly. I still have my secrets, Professor, just like you have yours. Dumbledore stared at Max for quite some time, and Max also didn't flinch back as he stared back at Dumbledore. After staring for nearly a minute, Dumbledore said, everyone has their secrets, huh? Max nodded at this. He then thought about the spells he had to practice in Prefect, so he decided to head back. Professor, I still have some things to take care of. I'll meet you after a while. After saying that, he left the office. Max then went to library and again made 50 shadow clones and started to perfect one spell per clone. By the time he finished, it was already midnight, so he went off to his room to get some rest. Harry, who was in his room, was already writing a letter to his two best friends regarding Max and about how they got a genuine professor this time for Dada. After finishing up the letter, he gave it to Hedwig, who flew off. Max, who woke up earlier than usual, put on his gravity seal and started to go good exercises. After nearly 3 hours of exercising, Max was drenched in sweat. He then used scouring charm to clean himself. Because of magic, his life has become a bit too easy, he thought. He then made his way to the dining hall to get some breakfast. Max then had his breakfast with Harry and the other professors. After that, Dumbledore asked him to start his lessons for Harry. Max looked at Dumbledore and said, I believe I already started my classes from yesterday, right? Dumbledore thought about how Harry was flying yesterday and nodded. Well, good. Carry on then. Max walked out with Harry and told him, Harry, today you'll be learning the Patronus charm. There are too many Dementors around the school here, so this will be the first charm you'll learn. You got till evening to get the basics. Harry thought for a while and asked, Professor, could you show it to me again? Max looked around for a while and found a lonely Dementor floating around. Follow me, Harry. Then he flew up. Harry casted the levitating charm on his robes and followed Max. He saw Max going towards a Dementor. As soon as he saw it, he felt the surroundings go cold. Then he called out, Professor, don't you think we should land? Max looked back at Harry and knew that Harry might get affected a bit too much because of this Dementor, so he decided to go down. Harry, who saw Max get down, followed him. Max turned around and said to Harry, Harry, to get this spell to actually work, you need to bring forth your happiness, like your good memories or happy memories. Look at me, I'm remembering the time when me and girlfriend went out. After that, he saw the Dementor headed towards him and shouted, Expecto Patronum. A huge white light started to glow in his hand and slowly formed into a 3-meter ape with banged its chest with its hands and went forth towards the Dementor. The Dementor, what felt the Patronus charm headed its way, started to turn back, but it was a bit too slow and got itself bombarded by the ape which ripped it apart. Harry was watching this with wide eyes. Max looked at him and said, "This is the full version of this charm. Yesterday what you saw was the basic one. Come on, get started. After you learn the basics we'll try it on a Dementor." Harry nodded and started to search for happy thoughts. Because Harry was suffering from his aunt's family nearly all his life, he wasn't able to find any good memories. After a while he opened his eyes and sighed. Max looked at Harry and saw that he was having trouble. "What happened, Harry?" Harry said, "Well, the thing is, Professor, I'm not able to find his memories." Max shook his head and said, "Nonsense. You remember coming to Hogwarts, remember making new friends here, then there was the time when you played Quidditch, you won House Cup twice in a row. Come on, Harry. You have lot of stuff, you're just covering it up. Let it be free. Enjoy yourself. Having fun is not a sin. So remember all the fun times you've had with your friends." Harry this time closed his eyes and thought about meeting Hagrid, and then thought about Ron and Hermione, and all the times he sneaked around with the invisibility cloak, and the time when Hermione was turned into a cat because of Polyjuice potion. After thinking all this he started to smile and started the Patronus charm, Expecto Patronum. This time Harry's wand tip started to flicker with white light and slowly started to glow. The light got bigger and bigger, but it didn't take any form, it looked like just bright light pouring out of his wand. Max, who was watching this, was surprised. He had to work with Shadow Clone nearly one whole day, but here Harry got it in nearly 10 minutes. Max thought, so this what they call a natural. Well, even in movie he got it in his third try, so it's not a surprise. Max said, "Fantastic, Harry. Simply awesome." Harry stopped pouring magic and started panting. Max went to him and patted him at the same time channeled some ki into him. Max then said, "Okay, Harry. Now you rest for a while and you practice it for 10 times. After that we'll try it on a Dementor." Harry said, "Professor, I think after resting for a while, I think I could try it on a Dementor." Max shook his head and chuckled. "Harry, Dementors feed on people's happiness. So if you're not proficient with this charm, it won't work. Then you know what happens, right?" Harry nodded. He also then thought that it's better to be safe than sorry. After that Harry practiced till evening and Max often gave him some ki to relieve him from straining himself. After that Max brought Harry near a Dementor. "Harry, remember how you practiced. Don't be nervous. I'm right here, so just be calm, alright?" Harry gulped and nodded. After that Harry calmed himself and stepped forward and the Dementor noticed then standing there and started to move towards them. Harry looked at it with a firm expression and shouted, "Expecto Patronum." His wand started to emit bright light and the Dementor was stopped a meter away from him. From behind Max, who was watching, said, "That's right, Harry. Now pour in a bit more magic." Harry, hearing this, nodded and poured more magic through his wand, and the light started to shine more bright, and repelled the Dementor. After the Dementor went away, Harry started to pant heavily. Then he started to laugh. "I did it, Professor. I did it." Max smiled at him and said, "Yes, you did. Now we have nearly 2 weeks, so let's teach you some combat spells in this time." Chapter 73 The Spectacle. After that day, Max trained Harry almost every day. Now that the new semester is about to begin in 2 days, Max said to Harry, "Harry, tomorrow you practice by yourself, I have some things to take care of. I'll be back by tomorrow evening, so try not to go to the Forbidden Forest. Going there alone is still dangerous." Harry nodded and continued walking. Max, after training him, went to see Snape. Snape, who saw Max coming towards him, was surprised. As far as he knew, this new professor never did get himself involved much with others. Max found his way towards Snape and asked, "Professor Snape, could you do me a favor?" Snape snorted and said, "What kind of favor would our new talented professor might require of me?" Max knew that Snape had an extreme character, so he didn't bother to beat around the bush and said, "I need a couple bottles of Veritaserum. Could you make it?" Snape looked at him sharply and said, "I can make it, but I won't." Max smiled at him and said, "What if I say that I'll use it on one of the Marauders?" Snape, hearing this, was interested. "I'm listening." Max then continued, "Well, I was planning to use it on one of the Marauders after the sorting ceremony. You know they used to prank everyone in their school days, so it's about time somebody played them." Snape, hearing this, smiled and said, I'm willing to help you, but only this once. Could you tell me why do you need 2 Veritaserum? Max said, I need it for backup. Snape shook his head and said, well, whatever. But you didn't get this from me. Max nodded hearing this and said, well, I'll be gone for a while. Could you make it before the school starts? Snape thought about it and said, to make it, it's gonna take more time. I believe I have some in my stock, I'll get that. Max was happy hearing this. After that Max went out of Hogwarts. After 2 days the first year he students and all the old students made their way towards Hogwarts. Hermione and Ron were talking about the Dementors that they saw in the train. Professor Lupin directly went to meet Dumbledore. Dumbledore, who was talking with Max, noticed Lupin walking towards his office, so he opened the stairway door. Lupin, who entered, saw Dumbledore and Max sitting and chatting. He went there and before he could say anything, Dumbledore started talking. Ah, Professor Lupin. So nice of you to join us. Here, let me introduce you to your assistant. This is Professor Max Argent. He'll be your assistant in Dada classes. Lupin, who saw Max, was a bit hesitant. He wasn't bothered that Max was young, he was just afraid that Max will find out about his other identity and treat him differently. He looked at Dumbledore and asked, Professor, do you think that it's really a good idea to appoint an assistant to me? You know that people aren't comfortable around me. Max smiled at him and said, you don't need to worry about being a werewolf. I don't mind it. Hearing this, Lupin was shocked, but Dumbledore just smiled. Lupin asked, how did you know? Max just said, it's easy to recognize a werewolf when you're living with one. Dumbledore looked at Max and asked, are you also one, Professor Argent? Max simply glanced at Dumbledore and said, no, but my girlfriend and some of me friends are. Lupin sighed in relief hearing this. He looked at both of them and said, thank you. Dumbledore simply waved his hand and said, well, it's getting late. I don't think we would want to miss the sorting ceremony this year. Max interrupted him and said, Professor, I'll be coming in a little late. So, would you mind excusing my absences for a while? Dumbledore didn't mind this. So he went out with Lupin. Max just simply took another route to the dining hall, but he didn't enter there. He stood near the door as he watched everything. He saw Harry and his friends talking excitedly about the new Dada teachers, he saw the nervous first years. And when he was looking around, he noticed Luna looking towards him. He just motioned her to be quiet and continued looking for his target. By the time he found his target, the sorting ceremony was finished and Dumbledore started to give his speech telling students to stay away from the Forbidden Forest. At this time Max pointed his finger below the Gryffindor table and silently chanted the levitation charm as he made his way towards Dumbledore and said, sorry for interrupting this, Professor, but I think it's about time I let everyone know something. Hearing this, Snape was happy thinking that he'll expose Lupin being a werewolf. Looking at Max's serious expression, Dumbledore nodded to him. As much as he didn't like this, he trusted Max enough to comply when things get serious. Max thanked him and flickered his finger as a rat was dragged from under the table of the Gryffindors. Ron, who saw this, started to shout, hey, let go of Scabbers. Max simply muttered silencio and no sound came out of Ron. Minerva, who saw this, angrily said, Professor Argent, we don't use spells to punish students. Max, who brought the rat near him, glanced at her and said, it had to be done, headmistress. Then he looked at Dumbledore and said, Professor, did you notice this animagus? As soon as everyone heard this, they got curious and tried to sense the magic in the rat. Then all the teachers were shocked as they sensed magic hidden deep within the rat. Max then took the Veritaserum and shoved it into its mouth and chanted a spell. As soon as he did that, that rat turned into a man, but the man looked at them with lifeless eyes as the Veritaserum had taken effect. Some of the teachers immediately recognized him and were shocked to see him alive. Lupin tried to make a move, but Snape pointed his wand at him and asked, what do you think you're doing? Let him finish what he started. All your marauders were a menace. Now it seems like one of you even faked their own death. Max nodded at him as asked the man who was kneeling there, what's your full name? The man said in a blank voice, Peter Pettigrew. Chapter 74, The Spectacle 2 inches. Peter Pettigrew. Most of the senior students who heard the name felt it was kinda familiar. But teachers who stood there turned serious. Max smiled and continued to ask him, could you narrate what happened 13 years ago with the Potter family? Peter continued to speak in a monotone voice. Dark Lord found out where the Potter family was hiding and attacked them. He killed Lily and James Potter, but before he was able to kill Harry Potter, his spell bounced back at him, killing him in the process, but Harry Potter made it out of there with just a scar. Hearing this, everyone who was there knew that the secrets from that night will be revealed to public eye now. Max then asked, "Then would you mind explaining how Voldemort found out where the Potter family was living?" Lupin, who heard this, started to get suspicious. He didn't understand why Max was asking Peter this question. But before he could come to any conjecture, Peter started to talk. "I was the secret keeper of the Potter family. But because I was working for the Dark Lord, I told him where they were." Hearing this, everyone, including Dumbledore, was shocked. All these days everyone thought that Sirius was the traitor, but hearing this they all thought that Sirius was pitiful. Max looked at everyone's reaction and continued, "Then tell us about what happened between you and Sirius that year." Peter said in his blank monotone voice, "Sirius, who got to know that I betrayed them, hunted after me throughout the city. When I had nowhere to go, I used a dark spell which killed a few muggles, and I lost a few fingers to that spell because I couldn't handle the magic. Then I turned into my animagus form and went into the sewers. Everyone thought that I died that day, but I hid myself carefully." Hearing this, Lupin was close to tears for suspecting Sirius. Dumbledore was seriously pondering as to how to deal with the consequences of this confession. Max, who was satisfied with the confession, loudly said, "You got that, guys." At this time several people entered the dining hall from different places. The woman who was standing in front said, "Thank you, Mr. Argent, for that concealing spell and catching this bastard. Without your help nobody would have figured out the truth." Max simply nodded and said, "Don't mention it, Ms. Bones." Then he turned to his right and saw another woman with a camera and a writing quill taking notes on everything. Max said to her, "Ms. Skeeter, I think the Daily Prophet is pretty interested in this, right?" Rita Skeeter nodded and said, "Mr. Argent, I didn't think that you'd reveal the greatest mystery that was ever hidden. The Daily Prophet is going to have a field day with this. I'm going to enjoy taking down his entire lineage with this, if they even exist." She was pretty happy with this juicy news. Dumbledore, who saw many Aurors and Rita Skeeter coming out, was very surprised. He asked Max, "Did you apply the concealing spell on them?" Max said, "Yes, Professor. I wanted the world to know what he did. I could have killed him silently and be done with it, but this is way better." At this time Amelia Bones said, "With his confession, and with the newspaper and everyone here as witness, I think we'll be able to get justice for the Potter family and Sirius Black." After exchanging some pleasantries, the Aurors went back. Rita Skeeter had a small chat with Max and she also went back. After all that happened, the students started talk among themselves about the events that preceded. Harry was shocked, angry and sad watching all this. He didn't exactly know what happened that night, but listening to everything that happened here, he knew that his parents' best friend betrayed them and because of him they died. He wanted to talk to Max desperately, since Max seemingly knew almost everything that happened there. Right now all the teachers were having an intense discussion about Peter Pettigrew and Max. Snape asked Max, "How did you know what happened that night? And why didn't you tell us earlier?" Max shrugged it off and turned to Dumbledore and said, "Professor Dumbledore, would you please tell them not to pry too much? This was supposed to happen, so it happened." Dumbledore nodded hearing this and told them, "Professors, I understand that you are curious, but let this matter to rest. I'll tell you about it when the time comes. For now, let's just be happy that Pettigrew was caught." The next morning the whole wizarding world was blown by the news about Peter being the traitor and Sirius the one being noble friend till the end. Rita Skeeter even managed to dig up information about Sirius being thrown to Azkaban without a trial. This news shook the wizarding world to no end. Many people started to question whether Fudge was fit to be a minister. Cornelius Fudge, who heard the news, was shocked and scared. He knew that Sirius was being held in prison without a trial, but he didn't expect anyone to prove him innocent that too this way in front of so many people. What he was worrying about most was Rita Skeeter exaggeration the whole scenario in the papers. So he decided to visit the smartest person he knew of to help him, and that person was the ever-cunning Lucius Malfoy. Lucius, who read the paper, was already expecting Fudge's visit. Even Lucius didn't want Sirius to be announced innocent, as he's expecting to make his son Lord Black through his wife's side as heritage, but Sirius coming out and the possibility of him declaring Harry Potter as Lord Black wasn't looking good for him, so he needs Sirius dead or inside prison. Thus when Fudge visited him, he didn't let Fudge talk at all, he directly said, "I don't want to hear anything. Just announce that Pettigrew is innocent as until proven guilty in court, and confessions under the effect of potions should be done under supervision. As such, everything that he said it's to be null and void." Fudge was still skeptical about this. What happens when he says the same thing in court? Lucius said in his arrogant tone, "He won't make it and you'll make sure that he escapes or dies before that. We don't want these kind of things happening at times like this." Fudge nodded. Then Lucius continued, "And make that kid who caught Pettigrew a suspect in Sirius's escape. That'll show him not to mess with things." Fudge was about to nod, but he stopped because of shock when he looked up. Blank, underscore cliffhanger underscore, blank, underscore chapter 75 judgment. As Fudge saw Max standing behind Lucius, he was shocked to the core. He didn't know when or how Max got there. Lucius saw Fudge, who seemed to be shocked, and noticed that Fudge was looking behind him, so he slowly turned to see Max there, which shocked even him. Max, who was standing there, noticed that they found him, said with a smile, "So, you guys are already planning to fuck this up, huh?" Lucius, who heard this, got angry and held his wand and said, "Boy, you made a mistake by coming here. But you saved us the trouble of looking for you." Max looked at Lucius' wand and waved his hand, which destroyed the wand, and then he said, "Well, I'll just get straight to the point. One of you will die here, so why don't you guys pick which one? And don't try to escape, I've already sealed the area. Oh, Minister Fudge, if you think you can do better magic and attack me, then I'll kill you first and walk away." Hearing this, Fudge was a bit scared. Even when he was in his prime, he wasn't as good as Lucius, and now seeing how Lucius got his wand destroyed easily, he knew that this kid was a tough, but he still had good pride as a minister, so he said, "Look here, boy. You don't know what you're doing. Do you think that you can just walk around killing people? Especially important people like us. So just surrender yourself." Lucius, who was the smart one, knew that Max wasn't going to budge for this, so he decided to do the smart thing. "I think I'll take up on your offer. If you're to kill Fudge, then I'll help you put some in the minister's position that'll be in your favor. And by my guess, Fudge didn't inform anyone that he's coming here, so it'll be the best if we're to finish him off." Hearing this, Fudge was taken aback. He didn't expect Lucius to say something like this, but thinking about the situation they're in, it seems feasible that Lucius would say this, so also decided to do something about it. "Argent, you should know that Lucius is cunning. You could never trust him. If I were to die here, he might use it as a leverage against you in the future. You never know what men like him are capable of. And you being here with no alibi might make you a suspect. So think about it." Max said in a calm manner. "Well, you don't have to worry about my alibi. My clone is having tea with Ms. Bones in the watchful eyes of Pubic." Hearing this, both of them were shocked. But Max knew that Fudge was right. Lucius is a cunning fellow. If he were to threaten him, then he could easily kill Lucius, but he wasn't foolish enough to leave a ticking time bomb. So before they could react, Max charged a key ball and pressed it into Lucius. Lucius, who was about to do wandless magic, was totally disintegrated by the key ball. Fudge, who saw this, was shivering. He has never seen such a terrifying magic in his life. Fudge, being a minister of magic, had seen some dark and twisted spells in his time, but this was the first time seeing something like this. Then he saw Max looking at him and charging another key ball, so he said in a hurried manner, "Mr. Argent, I swear to you, I'm not going to speak about this situation to anyone. You and me, both of us were never here. You have nothing to worry from me. So you don't have to kill me. I'll free Sirius and put Pettigrew in prison. We'll have a cooperative relationship in the future." Max's point of view. What a coward. I didn't expect him to be this much of a pussy. I slowly diffused the key ball and told him, "Minister Fudge, I don't plan to kill you, you know. You being the Minister of Magic will benefit me a lot. So see ya soon." After that, I teleported from there to Hogwarts. I will keep him alive for now, but when I'm about to leave this world, I think I should finish him off. Rats like him are disgusting to even look at. Then I soon found Harry, who was talking with Lupin. Well, he could be telling Harry about Sirius. Let me check. I should train him more, since I can't stick around with him forever. Universal point of view. Harry and Lupin saw Max coming towards them. Lupin stood up and asked, "Thank you, Professor Argent. I mean, I would have forever believed my friend Sirius to be a traitor if it weren't for you." Max smiled at him and said, "No need to mention that, Professor. I did what's right." He then turned to Harry and said, "So Harry, wanna learn a new spell?" Harry, who wanted to talk to Max from the time of the incident, finally for the chance to talk to he nodded heavily and said, "Yes, Professor." After that they both left Lupin standing there and went to practice. Fudge, who just came to Ministry, was having the worst day of his life. He couldn't believe that Lucius had died that easily. And he was even more frightened thinking about Max. And now he has to announce in front of all the newspapers that Sirius was innocent and make a public apology to him. This day couldn't get any shittier than this for him. He looked at the reports who were straining around the Ministry and called them. Rita, who was standing in front, asked, "Minister Fudge, who do you say to Peter Pettigrew's confession and Sirius being innocent?" Fudge looked at her and said, "I can only say that we all made a huge mistake 13 years ago. Given the circumstances we had at that time, we didn't have time to look through it and I apologize for that." Another reporter asked, "So are you saying that Sirius Black is innocent?" Fudge nodded and said, "Even though I'm sad that he had to suffer in prison for all these years, I'm still happy that the truth can be finally revealed. And, yes, Sirius Black is innocent. It's due to our carelessness that he was in prison in this time." Rita then asked, "So what do you intend to do for Sirius Black? He suffered all these years in prison, so you must be willing to compensate him, right?" Fudge sweated bullets hearing this. He knew if he were to continue answering their questions like this, he would be saying goodbye to his career as a minister, so he said, "Well, we are currently discussing that in the Ministry. So if you'll excuse me, I have to be there." After saying this, he walked inside, ignoring all of their questions.
Another tale fades into the silence. But here, in the fantasy audiobook library, stories never sleep. Subscribe and return when your heart seeks adventure. We'll be waiting.